Chapter 1470. In Bai Xiaowen's opinion, Xian Feng's 100-mile instant jade talisman should be worth more than 500 spirit crystals. However, Xian Feng probably wouldn't be willing to pay 500 spirit crystals for his life. Bai Xiaowen didn't want to squeeze any more benefits. After accepting the 300 spirit crystals, he waved his hand and told Xian Feng to get lost. Xian Feng ran all the way to the exit of the cave before turning back and taking a deep look at Bai Xiaowen, as if he wanted to engrave this person's image in his mind. Bai Xiaowen didn't care so much. He smiled and put the 300 spirit crystals into his storage space. Dior, I used Camille's identity. Will it be harmful to her? Cecilia asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Of course not, because this plane doesn't change appearances, and our faces aren't covered. Xian Feng must have remembered our faces. If he finds Camille and Locke for revenge, he'll know he found the wrong person after seeing them with his own eyes. Cecilia smiled in relief. Bai Xiaowen continued, if he knows I'm from Earth and understands the information on Earth, he can determine my origin and identity based on my fighting style. After all, my fighting style is rather special, and there aren't many evolvers on Earth who advance every year. Summoners were a rare profession to begin with. Bai Xiaowen had just advanced and was only level 11, but he was already leading a large group of summoned creatures. It was indeed eye-catching. However, what Bai Xiaowen didn't know was that although not many evolvers were born on Earth every year, many evolvers were born in the Starlink every year. This was because the awakened ones in the Starlink had a superior environment. Every territory in the Starlink was a suitable place for awakened ones to grow. The higher the concentration of spirit energy, the faster the awakened ones would progress. In fact, every territory in the Starlink could be regarded as a treasure space. The awakened ones in the Starlink were equivalent to living in treasure spaces all the time. This Xian Feng didn't look much older than Bai Xiaowen, but he was already a level 12 evolver. Therefore, the number of new evolvers added to the Blue Planet Evolver platform every year was very high. Only a small portion of them came from Earth and were called natives by the Starlink people. Even if Bai Xiaowen was hated by Xian Feng, he would not think that Xian Feng was an evolver from Earth. Moreover, as a giant on the same level as Pan-Asia, the Divine Court was not something that Xian Feng could easily investigate. Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia went to the blood pool and saw the Wraith banner floating above, as well as the 99 young boys and girls sleeping in the metal cages not far away. Cecilia went over, opened the cage door, and released all the children. The younger ones were 11 or 12 years old, while the older ones were 13 or 14 years old. After being woken up, these children burst into tears. There was the joy of surviving a calamity, as well as the fear of losing their loved ones and families. The outer organization of the Black Sky Cult, which was the bandit group that had been eliminated earlier, when they kidnapped the boys and girls, they didn't do it sneakily, but openly massacred the village and set it on fire. Cecilia asked them one by one. Among these children, more than 80 had seen their loved ones being massacred with their own eyes. In other words, there were more than 80 confirmed orphans. The remaining 10 or so people just didn't see it with their own eyes, so they still had a glimmer of hope. However, with the ferocity of the bandits, it would be difficult for them to escape. Cecilia had a headache. How should we deal with these orphans? Bai Xiaowen said, we can't let them live in the shouting plain. Otherwise, the chances of them surviving are very small. Even if they survive in the cracks of society, they will most likely become ruthless in order to survive and become evil people like the bandits who massacred the village. Orphans who had suffered a tragic fate had already been planted with the seeds of extremism in their temperaments. If they were educated by society, it would indeed be difficult for them to walk on the right path. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, I can send them to the territory and make them my subjects. Cecilia's brows relaxed. That's right. That's a good idea. Bai Xiaowen continued, for the natives of the spirit realm to be brought over and become my subjects, one condition must be met, they must be willing and not have any intention of resisting. Otherwise, I won't be able to use my Lord Teleportation authority. It's much easier to subdue followers than the awakened stage, Cecilia said with a smile. The other territories of the Star Alliance had also used this method to welcome the natives of the spirit world into their territory during their initial stages of development. As long as the natives agreed and didn't have any intention of resisting, they could be teleported to the Starlink territory. However, they had to pay the corresponding spirit crystals according to the native's strength, status, influence, and so on. Another drawback was that the natives brought over couldn't be treated as followers. Subjects wouldn't be absolutely obedient to the Lord. After the natives became subjects, there was even a possibility of rebellion. Therefore, they had to be careful when receiving them. If they deceived the natives who were stronger than the Lord himself into entering their territory, it would be purely courting death. Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia then told the orphans about this matter. In the evolutionary plane, the natives had a much higher acceptance of other worlds and space-time travel. Every plane had its own understanding. For example, in the ancient Huaxia plane, the natives would understand the Starlink territory as Immortal Mountain, Immortal Land of Transformation, and so on. Some unscrupulous evolver lords would deliberately deceive the natives in order to rapidly expand their territories in the early stages. They would persuade them to follow them to the Immortal Mountain and embark on the path of cultivation. Once they were pulled into their own territory, they would change their attitude and treat these people as slaves to do manual labor. Bai Xiaowen didn't do that. His territory had a lot of undead laborers, and the labor force at the bottom was enough. He wanted to use these orphans as an army of natives and slowly nurture them. Loyalty was very important. After all, these orphans had been captured by the Black Sky sect and were high-grade materials to refine the Wraith banner. Their aptitudes were much better than ordinary spirit realm youths. In addition, Bai Xiaowen didn't have enough spirit crystals to pay for the reception. Bai Xiaowen explained to the orphans that his immortal land had just been reclaimed and was still rather desolate. However, the only guarantee was that they wouldn't starve or freeze after going there. They could also learn skills and take revenge on the Black Sky sect in the future. The 80 or so confirmed orphans expressed their willingness one after another. Most of the youths who hadn't seen their homes destroyed and their families killed were also willing to become Bai Xiaowen's subjects. Only a few of them mentioned that they wanted to go home and take a look before giving up. Bai Xiaowen said, "I'll send a subordinate to accompany you home and take a look." He called Kits over and arranged, "I'll leave this matter to you. I'll only give you 2 days. After 2 days, bring these youths and meet me at the Sand Mountain." Chapter 1471. Kits called out, "Boss, these are all normal people. The highest level is below level 3. I'm afraid they won't be able to travel that fast." Bai Xiaowen said, "Don't worry. I'll let the Wrath Claw carry them." The Wrath Claw. Awu? With the Wrath Claw's current size, it was more than enough to carry these teenagers. They sat on the Wrath Claw's broad back with some curiosity and grasped the rune armor on the surface of the Wrath Claw's body. The Wrath Claw grumbled a few times in protest. Bai Xiaowen planned the route according to the village residents that the youths had mentioned. Kits took the Wrath Claw and ran out of the cave. After that, Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia carried out a large search of the Shatai Mountain branch. First, they searched for the corpse. Chief Lu's corpse was the main target of Bai Xiaowen's search. They obtained the golden-backed machete first. This machete should be gold equipment, right? Cecilia couldn't see the machete's attributes, so she could only let Bai Xiaowen use the Eye of Evolution to appraise it. Bai Xiaowen glanced over it. 1000/, gold quality. Sharpness A+. Spiritual power increased 2 levels. Additional skill, Gale, passive. The wielder's normal attacks have the effect of cleaving. When using area of effect combat skills, spiritual power increased by an additional level. Combat skills were actually the abbreviation of a warrior's skills, corresponding to spells. Bai Xiaowen understood. No wonder Chief Lu's 10,000 wheel was so fierce. It was enhanced by this gold weapon, 1000/. Cecilia couldn't use this weapon, so Bai Xiaowen had to use it first. Fortunately, evolver equipment wasn't bound, and there were no fixed requirements for strength, agility, and so on. Under the rules of reality, the stronger one was, the easier it was to wield this heavy machete. The higher one's agility, the faster one's attack speed. With Bai Xiaowen's current 40-plus points of strength and dexterity, he seemed to stumble as he swung the 1,000-men slash. He didn't feel as domineering as Chief Lu. Hey, Chief Lu's ring seems a bit special. Cecilia instinctively felt that something was wrong. Bai Xiaowen's Eye of Evolution scanned the area. Spatial ring, connect to a 30 cubic meter storage space. The mental connection has failed and cannot be activated. I've finally found a storage device. Bai Xiaowen took off the spatial ring and put it on his finger. Then, he tried to communicate with it using his spiritual senses to see if there were any treasures inside. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Bai Xiaowen tried to use his spiritual thoughts or true inner force, the interspatial ring did not respond at all. Mental connection failed, unable to open, storage space. Bai Xiaowen read the notification again, and his expression darkened. He clearly knew that there must be something inside this ring. It might even be Chief Lu's treasure collection for half his life. But why couldn't he open it? Taking a step back, even if there wasn't anything good inside, it was still good to get a storage tool out of nowhere. But now, this spatial ring that had failed could only be used as a decoration. Dior, don't be discouraged. I think this ring is bound to Chief Lu's soul. Only he can open the extra-dimensional space connected to the ring, Cecilia analyzed. Bai Xiaowen said, that should be the case. Put it away first. Maybe we can force it open in the future. Anyway, this spatial ring was extremely small and did not take up much space. However, the spatial ring could not be stored in Bai Xiaowen's storage space. He could only wear it on his finger as a temporary decoration. Chief Lu's spirit crystals must have all been placed in the spatial ring. He did not have a single spirit crystal on him. He only had a leather armor and a pair of leather boots left. They were all Evolver equipment, and they had been taken off as well. Rhinoceros back armor, gold quality, hardness level B, spiritual defense level B+. Additional skill, toughness, passive. When the wearer is subjected to a single physical attack, there is a 30% chance of deflecting, greatly reducing the damage of the physical attack. Elk leather boots, blue quality, hardness level C, spiritual defense level C. Additional skill, silent step, passive. When the wearer moves, there will be no sound under his feet. The additional skills of these two pieces of equipment were average, but the highlight of the rhinoceros back armor was that it had a spiritual defense level B+, which could defend against a considerable amount of spiritual damage. Afterwards, he had also taken quite a few pieces of equipment from the Black Sky Cult's leader and disciples. Most of them were gray and white quality, and there was not even a single piece of blue equipment. These pieces of equipment were, of course, thrown to the summoned creatures. It could be considered a change of equipment for them. Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia discussed the distribution. Under Cecilia's insistence, the rhinoceros back armor was also given to Bai Xiaowen. She only wanted a pair of elk leather boots. In Cecilia's words, as the core of the summoned army, Bai Xiaowen would definitely be the enemy's main target. It was necessary for her to have a gold defensive equipment. Because Evolver equipment was not bound, if Bai Xiaowen encountered better defensive equipment in the future, he could give her the leather armor to wear. The harvest of this battle was not just a pile of equipment obtained from looting the corpses. What was even more surprising was that Bai Xiaowen had found the warehouse of the Shatai Mountain branch. There were a few hundred bags of food stored inside. They were all wheat, and their value was not high. The main thing was that there was no storage space to carry it, so they could only put it aside. What was truly valuable were the various ores and herbs that the Shatai Mountain branch members usually excavated. Red copper ore, level 1 white forging material, can be smelted. Mithril ore, level 3 blue forging material, can be smelted. Celestial thorn, level 1 white medicinal material, can be extracted. Phoenix eye flower, level 2 white medicinal material, can be extracted. Considering the limited storage space, Bai Xiaowen gave up on the large pile of red copper ore and started with the high-quality materials. He stuffed all the mithril and adamantine ores into the storage space. As for Cecilia, he also put in a small pile of medicinal materials and a batch of ores. Dior, the harvest of taking out this black sky cult's nest is very bountiful. Cecilia said with a smile. Yes. The world of evolvers also has its advantages. You can plunder without restraint. No matter what method you use to obtain spiritual items, you can bring them out. This kind of realistic rule was very beneficial to the strong. While the weak were fretting over a piece of equipment, the strong were already fretting over the lack of space in their storage space. The only problem was the production of spirit crystals. As a resource to speed up cultivation and the common currency of evolvers, Bai Xiaowen speculated that spirit crystals should not be the only way to obtain rewards. Otherwise, with spiritual items being so easy to plunder and spirit crystals being so hard to obtain, the final result would be that the purchasing power of spirit crystals would soar, and spiritual items would fall to the price of cabbages. But from his encounters with other evolvers during this period of time, this was not the case. Cecilia's rescue mission had also been completed. The completion rate was 88%, excellent, and he had obtained 17 spirit crystals. The main reason was that the difficulty of the rescue mission itself was not high, and the number of spirit crystals rewarded was very low. There was still one final highlight, or perhaps one could say trouble, that was the Wraith banner floating above the blood pool. Chapter 1472. Bai Xiaowen scanned it with the Eye of Evolution. Wraith banner, incomplete, using the blood of living beings as the furnace and the power of hatred as the charcoal, an evil magic tool refined. Lacking the final activation process, unable to display its full power. This was the description of the incomplete version of the Wraith banner. When the Eye of Evolution scanned it with his true inner force, he saw the complete description of the Wraith banner. Wraith banner, green quality, set. Spiritual energy amplification level 3. Additional skill, Wraith, passive. The amplification of N-type spiritual energy attacks is increased by 2 levels. Instilling spiritual energy into the Wraith banner will create a Wraith effect on all living beings in a cone-shaped area. Bai Xiaowen could not see what the Wraith effect meant, because the Wraith banner was not completed yet. The fact that he could see the effects of the complete version of the Wraith banner was already due to the appraisal of the Eye of Evolution. Furthermore, it was actually a set. Combining it would definitely result in a qualitative change. It was no wonder that the Great Tang Dynasty was so interested in the Wraith banner and specifically made plans to obtain it. Even if it was not a set, just looking at the amplification effect, the Wraith banner was already a top-grade gold-grade equipment for people with N-type spiritual energy. N-type attacks could amplify spiritual energy by 5 levels, even stronger than the Thunderwood sword. Not to mention, there was also an active skill with unknown effects. Bai Xiaowen threw the Wraith banner, incomplete, to the Queen of Banshees. Among the summoned creatures, only the Queen of Banshees was suitable to use it. As for the undead demon arcane master, it was better to wait. Unfortunately, because it was incomplete, the Wraith banner only amplified spiritual energy by 2 levels. N-type spiritual energy attacks were only increased by 1 level, and the additional active effect was not activated. Therefore, to the Queen of Banshees, this Wraith banner was equivalent to a magic tool that amplified spiritual energy by 3 levels. It could increase the power of her spells by 30%. However, this was already not bad. In the conclusion of this battle, Bai Xiaowen's true inner force and Cecilia's stellar energy had both been depleted by more than 70%. If the overall strength of the Black Sky Cult branch was stronger, for example, if there were 1 or 2 more leaders, it would be much more troublesome. Bai Xiaowen's trump card was the 10,000 cutting wheel sealed in the Eye of Evolution. It could deal with elites, but it was almost impossible to kill a leader. After using the 10,000 incisions knife wheel, it was estimated that Bai Xiaowen's remaining true inner force would be almost depleted. If he continued to fight, it would not be good. Unlike the Awakened ones, the evolutionary plane did not have any items that could force a return. Bai Xiaowen had to return to the location of the Zhangzhou Ancient Road, broken boundary marker to trigger the space node and leave. In other words, if the Shatai Mountain branch was defeated, the outcome would be very miserable. Such a grim situation did not allow for the slightest bit of carelessness. Of course, a normal Black Sky Cult branch would not have 2 leader-level experts. The appearance of Xian Feng here had already increased the strength of the branch by a large margin. Next, they had to wait for Keats and the Wrath Claw to send those youths back. There was plenty of time, so Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia relied on studying the manuals of their occupations to enter a state of cultivation and speed up the recovery of their true essence, stellar energy. In the state of cultivation, the recovery of their spiritual energy doubled. Even so, the two of them still spent more than 6 hours to recover their spiritual energy to full. This cultivation allowed Bai Xiaowen to have a deeper understanding of the manual of his second profession, the Great Void Sutra. After opening his eyes, Bai Xiaowen discovered that his surroundings had undergone a subtle change. His perception seemed to have increased slightly, and he could sense the flow of the air. The laws of the spirit world prompted him, your advanced specialty, meditation, has been upgraded. Currently at Specialist, Entry Level 1. Your specialty, meditation, has been upgraded. Currently at Specialist, Entry Level 2. Bai Xiaowen was both surprised and delighted. Just as many people had said, his aptitude was truly outstanding. Not only had his meditation been upgraded to Specialist, it had also risen by 2 levels. Bai Xiaowen tested his meditation specialty, and discovered that this specialty could not only correct the trajectory of spells, but also increase his casting speed. The most obvious change was the change in the peace scroll. Originally, he needed to first have a 4-color talisman appear in his palm, and then choose one of them. But now, with Specialist meditation, Bai Xiaowen only needed to go through it in his mind once, and the talisman he wanted to cast would be the one he wanted. In addition, the talisman's flying speed had also increased. Compared to before, it was more unexpected, making it harder for the enemy to guard against. Bai Xiaowen also tested the ancient martial art of the grass sect, Dark Brush. Sure enough, his casting speed had increased by quite a bit, and the flying speed of the flames on the ground had also increased. Cecilia had also improved. Her advanced shooting specialty had been upgraded to Shooting Specialization, Entry Level 1, long ago during the vocational trial. After this battle, she had studied the Star River Diagram, an ancient book of professions, and her shooting specialization had been upgraded to Entry Level 2. In the next 2 days, Bai Xiaowen practiced his Wood Avatar, and Cecilia also practiced her advanced stringless bow skill many times. After a day and a half, Kits completed his mission and brought the Wrath Claw and the 3 youths back to Mount Shatai. According to Kits, one of the youths had discovered that his house hadn't been burned, and he hadn't found the bodies of his family members. So, the youth had stayed at home, wanting to wait for his family to return. He didn't want to go to the uncivilized land anymore. Kits followed Bai Xiaowen's instructions and didn't force him. He left some food for the youth and left. Now, there were a total of 98 orphans, and all of them had agreed to join Bai Xiaowen's territory. Bai Xiaowen had already checked the price of transporting natives to the territory. The awakened natives were ranked according to their level multiplied by the number of spirit crystals in the template. Although these youths had good aptitude, they were generally only 10 to 14 years old. They hadn't received any training, and were equivalent to the most common template, with their level not even reaching level 3. Even so, Bai Xiaowen still had to spend 274 spiritual crystals for 98 young men and women. Fortunately, he'd earned 300 spirit crystals from Xian Feng, so he didn't feel bad about spending other people's money. Bai Xiaowen had also suddenly thought of having these youths carry a portion of supplies, such as ores, and so on, and teleport them back to the territory. However, Bai Xiaowen had failed. When these youths changed their identities from natives of the spirit realm to residents of the territory, the spirit realm's laws would retain their basic clothing and equipment, but other than that, they wouldn't be able to take away any materials or items. However, since they were generally awakened natives, they couldn't wear evolution-level equipment. Unable to take advantage of this loophole, Bai Xiaowen could only send off the first batch of residents of the territory with a sad expression on his face. Bai Xiaowen's plan was to have Li Shi, Cecilia, and the others train these youths in the territory. Using the density of spirit energy in the territory, they would first raise their levels to level 10, and then use the method of elemental energy imprints to promote them to personal guards, completing their breakthrough to evolution level. Chapter 1473. Aborigines or subjects had a completely different way of leveling up their levels in templates compared to the awakened and evolvers. They were also completely different from people who had signed follower contracts like Cecilia and Jinmei. As time passed and they grew older, aborigines with good aptitudes would slowly grow to level 10. If the environment was rich in spirit energy, aborigines with good aptitudes would naturally break through to level 11. For example, these youths were painstakingly collected by the Black Sky cult in order to refine the Wraith banner. Their aptitudes were at least above average. Even if they didn't have anyone to teach them, they would most likely grow to the level of bandits outside the Black Sky cult when they reached adulthood. If there was strict military training and systematic teaching, this growth process would be greatly shortened, and elite templates or even leader templates would be born. Close combat or shooting experts like Li Shi and Cecilia had already mastered the corresponding combat specialization. It was more than enough to teach these youths. Moreover, they could take the initiative to teach skills that they had mastered. For example, Li Shi's invincible sword slash and Cecilia's stringless bow. The world of evolvers tended to be more realistic. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen deduced that when they reached the proficient level in the classics of professions, they might be able to pass it on. This was because the classics of professions that they were learning now were all obtained by absorbing the insights of their predecessors. And when they reached the level of proficiency, they might be able to write professional classics themselves and inject their own insights into them. Taking a step back, perhaps the proficiency level wasn't enough. But what about the next level? Under the rules of reality, it would definitely be possible. It was just that it was too early to talk about this now. It was better to think of a way to get some ownerless professional classics from the spiritual realm. It was similar to the typing techniques back then. It was necessary to get more professional classics. When elite or leader level aborigines reached level 10 and prepared to break through, it was best to learn professional classics that matched their aptitudes. This way, they wouldn't waste their potential. Otherwise, they would naturally break through to level 11 and become the most common template, i.e., for points of base priority. There was one more thing to note. Aborigines were still aborigines. Even if they became subjects of a territory, their loyalty to the Lord wasn't absolute. This was because they weren't restricted by the follower contract. It was precisely because of this that many Evolver Lords on Earth and the Star Alliance were wary of the natives. If he nurtured the geniuses of the Aboriginals to such an extent that they could threaten his position, that would be too dangerous. Bai Xiaowen felt that this was the real situation. Based on this situation, absorbing the young and weak Aborigines and nurturing them was undoubtedly the right way to develop a force. The loyalty of these 98 Aborigines, who had been trained since they were teenagers, was definitely much higher than the adult Aborigines who had joined the territory later on. It was just that the training period was longer, and it might take 2 to 3 years to see results. This could be considered as Bai Xiaowen throwing a bomb in. After sending off the orphans, Bai Xiaowen brought Cecilia to Shangqing School to observe the ceremony. The mountain gate of Shangqing School was located on the side of Dongting Lake, south of the Yangtze River. In order to save time, Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia traveled day and night. After 3 days, the two finally arrived at the mountain gate of Shangqing School. After handing over the jade token to observe the ceremony, the gatekeeper politely invited them in. However, he was a little curious about Cecilia, who was wearing a bamboo hat and a mask. Bai Xiaowen didn't wear a bamboo hat and still showed his true appearance. Before entering the sect, he used the Eye of Evolution to scan the gatekeeper. Shangqing School's outer disciple, level 13, spiritual energy value 700. However, after entering the inner sect, he occasionally met inner sect disciples who were also level 13, but their spiritual energy values had soared to more than 1,000. There was indeed a huge gap between the outer sect and the inner sect. Bai Xiaowen recalled that Chenrong should be an inner sect elite disciple of Shanqing school. His spiritual energy value was around 1,500, which was stronger than ordinary inner sect disciples and was equivalent to a commander. Along the way, none of the Shanqing school disciples they met were stronger than Chenrong. It seemed that level 13 was the limit of a disciple like Chenrong. Any higher and he might be an elder or a headmaster. Dior, the scenery here is so beautiful. Cecilia saw that Bai Xiaowen was silent and asked softly, "What are you thinking about?" "Ah, nothing. I'm just evaluating the strength of Shanqing school." Bai Xiaowen smiled. This was a habit of his. As a wise man, Bai Xiaowen liked the feeling that everything was under his control. Even if his strength was limited and he couldn't fully grasp the situation, at least he had to calculate it well. Some people might think that Bai Xiaowen's journey was too smooth and that he almost didn't encounter any life-or-death situations. In fact, Bai Xiaowen's cautious personality, coupled with his calculating habits, meant that it was difficult for him to encounter life-or-death situations. In some seemingly dangerous situations, Bai Xiaowen had already calculated in his mind. It was completely under his control, and he could win as long as he worked hard. In the face of almost certain death, Bai Xiaowen activated his seed, broke through at the last moment, and completed a shocking reversal. This kind of action that resembled a main character's aura was a failure for him. A wise person would not allow himself to fall into a dangerous situation that was almost certain death. "Don't tire yourself out," Cecilia said softly. Bai Xiaowen smiled slightly. Soon, the two of them arrived at the valley entrance of the inner sect. An inner sect disciple was responsible for registering the guests' names. The moment Bai Xiaowen entered the valley entrance, he could feel a pair of invisible eyes scanning him. Bai Xiaowen followed the traces and saw a middle-aged man with a white face and no beard sitting cross-legged on the ridge next to the inner sect disciple registration office. His eyes were slightly closed, as if he was sleeping, but he wasn't. It was as if he had become one with the mountain under his butt. Bai Xiaowen understood that this middle-aged man who looked a little like a eunuch was probably a human-shaped detector. He was secretly checking the guest's spiritual power breath. Chenrong, an inner sect elite disciple, could determine that Bai Xiaowen was not an evil person from his spiritual power breath. This middle-aged man should be able to do the same. Bai Xiaowen's eye of evolution was injected with true inner force. He activated the active mode and quietly glanced at the middle-aged man. Shanqing School's elder, level 14, spiritual power 2,441 points. Good heavens, a lord-level boss. Although his spiritual power breath was concealed, judging from his spiritual power value, he was much stronger than the ancient Buddha temple's tree demon. Of course, because the tree demon was injured, it couldn't be used as a reference for lord-level bosses. No, lord-level bosses can't be called bosses in front of me? Bai Xiaowen pondered for a moment. Purely in terms of priority, Bai Xiaowen, who had 8 points of Taishu Sutra, was even stronger than lord-level bosses. He was equivalent to a king-level master. Chapter 1474. Although Bai Xiaowen felt a little proud, he still had some self-awareness. He was a king-level expert, but he was just an empty shell. He didn't have the skills of a real king-level expert. Moreover, he was only level 11. Just his level alone was 3 levels lower than the Shanqing School's elder. If he made a move, he would most likely be beaten up. Bai Xiaowen obediently followed the guidance of the Shanqing School's inner disciple. They walked forward along the mountain road and arrived at a group of buildings. As a prestigious and upright school, the Shanqing School was very hospitable. Every guest who came to watch the ceremony with a jade token was led by an inner disciple and assigned to a quiet room to rest. Later, servants brought in all kinds of melons and fruits for the guests to taste. The reason why they didn't provide daily meals was because the guests were basically all cultivators. Compared to meat, most cultivators preferred melons and fruits. Do you feel that the concentration of spiritual energy in the Shanqing school is much higher than in other areas? Bai Xiaowen asked in the quiet room. Cecilia nodded and said, yes, this feeling is even more obvious after entering the inner sect. Why? Bai Xiaowen said, maybe the Shanqing school set up some kind of formation, or maybe the location of the school is special and rich in spiritual energy. But let's not worry about that. Before we watch the ceremony, let's cultivate in peace. Cecilia asked curiously, just cultivate? Don't you want to do something? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said with a smile, the Shanqing school is loose on the outside but tight on the inside. Moreover, they are very powerful. We are new to the world of evolvers, so there are too many methods that we don't understand. The possibility of us being discovered if we go out and cause trouble is too high. It would be terrible if we were seen as evil spies. Bai Xiaowen thought when he saw the level 14 overlord, the Shanqing school's elder. As for whether he wanted to cause trouble in the future, he had to understand the Shanqing school better. Bai Xiaowen wouldn't do something he wasn't sure of. The Shanqing ceremony would be held the day after tomorrow. That night, Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia cultivated in the inner sect's quiet room. As an evolver, cultivation was actually a process of studying the books of the profession over and over again. In the process of studying, the subconscious mind would follow the enlightenment and slowly circulate the spiritual energy in the meridians. Every time he moved something, his spiritual energy would increase by a tiny amount. Over time, his spiritual energy value would increase. Once it reached a certain limit, he could break through to the next level and unlock the next chapter of the profession book. Once he was familiar with the initial chapter, he would no longer need to study the ancient book. He could consciously follow the ancient book's instructions and carry out the circulatory cycle transportation. Naturally, the efficiency of actively carrying out the qi circulation was much higher than subconsciously carrying out the qi circulation. It was equivalent to increasing one's cultivation speed by a level. Of course, it was only limited to evolvers with strong aptitude and comprehension that could quickly get rid of their dependence on the chapters of their profession manuals and achieve the ability to carry them on their own, such as Bai Xiaowen. Late at night, Bai Xiaowen, who was in the midst of cultivation, had just completed a circulatory circulation. His spiritual senses were sharp and he suddenly heard a faint cry of surprise. It sounded like a person had suddenly cried out, but his mouth was covered. What's the situation? Without hesitation, Bai Xiaowen pushed open the door and walked out. Cecilia, who was behind him, heard Bai Xiaowen's movements. She also ended her cultivation and followed him. What's wrong? Aren't you going to hide in the quiet room and cultivate and not go out to cause trouble? Cecilia asked in a low voice. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, I'm not the one causing trouble. It's the other way around. The sound just now was obviously that someone was ambushed. I guess I'm not the only one who heard it. Let's go take a look and see if we can trigger a side mission. Even if we encounter the patrolling members of Shanqing School, they won't accuse us unjustly. Shanqing School was a prestigious and powerful sect. They definitely wouldn't blame the ambush on Bai Xiaowen. If they blamed Bai Xiaowen, it meant that this sect didn't have much control over the inner sanctum. Bai Xiaowen didn't have to be too afraid. The two of them followed the sound and quickly arrived at the scene of the incident. Just as Bai Xiaowen expected, someone had arrived at the scene first. There were two of them. There was a corpse lying on the ground. Based on the corpse's attire, it should be an inner sanctum disciple. The two of them were wearing Shanqing school attire. One of them, who was petite, squatted down and seemed to be examining the corpse. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and stared fixedly at the corpse. Suddenly, his brows furrowed slightly and then immediately relaxed. The two people from Shanqing school noticed Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia's arrival at the same time. It's you? The petite figure who was squatting turned around and was surprised. Bai Xiaowen glanced at the two people from Shanqing school and realized that they knew each other. The one who was squatting was Chen Rong, an elite disciple of Shanqing school and a level 13 leader. The one who was standing was the elder from Shanqing school that they met during the day, a level 14 leader. Bai Xiaowen cupped his hands and bowed. Greetings to the seniors from Shanqing School, greetings to Miss Chen. It's Lu Wang's honor to be invited to the Shanqing ceremony by Miss Chen. Originally, my companion and I were sitting in the quiet room, waiting for the Shanqing ceremony to begin. We didn't expect to hear something, so we came to take a look. The elder from Shanqing School frowned slightly and looked at Bai Xiaowen. Chenrong, who is this person? Chenrong hurriedly replied, reporting to Elder Tang, this is fellow Taoist Lu Wang, a rogue cultivator that I mentioned in my training report. He relied on his own groping to cultivate a decent amount of elemental energy and even has a Tao technique that can exorcise ghosts and control corpses. When we killed the ancient Buddha temple's tree demon, Lu Wang contributed greatly. Therefore, I invited him to participate in the Shanqing ceremony. Elder Tang nodded slightly and then gave the order to leave. Since you're a guest, please stay in the quiet room and don't walk around. The area within 100 miles of the Shanqing School's inner sect is within the range of the mountain protecting formation. If you walk around, you'll trigger the formation's restrictions, which would be very bad. Bai Xiaowen looked at the corpse on the ground again and then looked at Chenrong. If it wasn't for this Elder Tang, Chenrong would have told him the truth. However, this Elder Tang seemed rather stubborn and valued the school's reputation. It seemed that she didn't want an outsider like Bai Xiaowen to interfere with the school's internal affairs. Chenrong stood up and said, Lu Wang, please go back and rest. When I have time, I'll definitely pay you a visit. After saying this, she blinked her eyes lightly. Bai Xiaowen understood and cupped his hands. I've been presumptuous. Elder Tang, Miss Chen, I'll take my leave. Not long after Bai Xiaowen returned to the quiet room, there was a light knock on the door. Cecilia opened the door and Chenrong came in. Brother Lu, long time no see. Chenrong originally had a trace of worry on his face. However, after seeing Bai Xiaowen, his brows relaxed. Miss Chen's complexion looks much better than when you were in Ancient Scholar Town. Your aura has become stronger. Bai Xiaowen praised. This wasn't flattery. Bai Xiaowen truly felt Chenrong's improvement. If he was originally a leader, he should have been a rare leader now. Even his spiritual energy had increased by more than 100 points. Chapter 1475. This is. Chenrong saw Cecilia in the room. Cecilia was not wearing a bamboo hat or a veil because it would be strange to wear these things in a room. It would make people suspect that there was something fishy going on. Chenrong was puzzled when she saw Cecilia's appearance as a foreign woman. Bai Xiaowen had already thought about it. He said, this is a friend I met when I was traveling in the western regions. She saved my life, so we can be considered friends. I see. Chenrong looked at Cecilia's eyes. He still felt a little uncomfortable, but he had let down his guard. Bai Xiaowen continued to ask, Miss Chen, you came here so late at night because of what just happened, right? Chenrong nodded. Brother Liu, do you have any other clues? Bai Xiaowen shook his head. I'm sorry. I heard a very soft cry and immediately rushed out. However, because I was not familiar with the layout of the house and the road, and it was not convenient for me to go through the door, I arrived too late. Instead, you and Elder Tang arrived first. Chenrong said, the dead disciple of Shanqing School was called Zhou Wu. He was one of the elite disciples who participated in the Tao discussion in the Shanqing ceremony. This is the third time a disciple of Shanqing School has been killed this month. Because it happened in the inner sanctum of Shanqing School, it was a scandal, so Elder Tang did not want outsiders to know about it. Elder Tang and Miss Chen, did you find any clues about the murderer when you checked Zhou Wu's body? Bai Xiaowen asked. Chenrong shook his head. Junior brother Zhou Wu was strangled by a great force and his neck was broken. There was no foreign energy left on his body, so it was impossible to infer the murderer's origin. Broken neck? Bai Xiaowen was slightly surprised. The battles between cultivators had always been a battle of Taoist techniques. Even martial artists relied on weapons to attack their enemies with sabers and sword chi. This kind of barbaric method of breaking a person's neck was really rare. Since Shangqing School's disciples have been killed one after another, why are they still holding the ceremony as scheduled? Wouldn't that give foreign forces a chance to sneak in? Bai Xiaowen asked. Chen Rong said, the sect leader is in closed-door meditation, all affairs, big and small, will be decided by the various elders. Some of the elders did want to postpone the ceremony, but they were opposed by most of the elders led by Elder Tang. Shangqing School has already invited masters from all the righteous sects to attend the ceremony. If we suddenly stop the ceremony, we will break our promise to others. On the other hand, if others know the real reason, they will definitely laugh at the Shangqing School for its internal chaos and lose the face of the sect. Bai Xiaowen understood. Shangqing School was indeed a famous school with a bad temper. It was not a big deal to suffer losses, but it was a big deal to lose face. Miss Chen, may I know what I can do for you? Bai Xiaowen skillfully tried to trigger the mission. Chen Rong said, the ceremony is coming, and I have to prepare for the Dao discussion conference. I don't have time to investigate this series of cases. I hope that Brother Liu can help me secretly investigate, because I suspect that there is a mole in the sect, and I dare not entrust this matter to my fellow disciples. Bai Xiaowen soon received a notification from the rules of the spiritual realm. Hero-level side mission, Murderer in the Dark, activated. Mission objective, investigate the serial killer hidden in Shangqing School and find evidence. Mission difficulty, a mission time limit, none, equal to the remaining time you stay in this world. Mission reward, 500 spirit crystals. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. He definitely had to accept the mission. The reward of 500 spirit crystals was not the most important thing. This was an opportunity to deeply participate in the sect's struggle in the Shaowei Plain. It was also an important start to the situation, so of course, he could not miss it. However, before accepting the mission, he should make it clear that he should strive for the benefits and convenience that he should strive for. Bai Xiaowen said, since Miss Chen has entrusted such an important task to me, of course I will not shirk it. However, I'm not familiar with the situation of the Shangqing sect's inner sect. Furthermore, I heard Elder Tang say that the inner sect is enveloped by the mountain protecting Grand Array. If by any chance I trigger the restriction, wouldn't I lose my little life inside? Chen Rong said, Brother Liu, don't worry. As he spoke, Chen Rong took out a scroll painting and handed it to Bai Xiaowen, saying, the protective mountain formation will only trigger the formation for people who don't know how to walk. All of us Inner Gate disciples know the route within the protective mountain formation. Now, I will give you the map of the route. After pausing for a moment, Chen Rong said, Brother Liu, try not to be discovered by others, including the Inner Gate disciples of the Shangqing School. After finding clues and evidence, come directly to the Lake Heart Pavilion to find me. Bai Xiaowen took the scroll painting and asked, I am confident that I can avoid the eyes and ears of the Shangqing disciples. However, the elders of the Shangqing School are all very powerful. If I don't happen to walk near them, I am afraid that it will be difficult for me to not be discovered. Chen Rong held a light object in his hand and handed it to Bai Xiaowen, saying, this is the fish pattern garment given by Master. Brother Liu, as long as you wear it, not only can you hide your tracks, but it can also isolate your body temperature and block most spiritual senses. Bai Xiaowen took it and glanced at the fish pattern garment with his eyes of evolution. After unfolding it, he could see that it was a cloak. Fish pattern garment, gold quality. Spiritual power protection, grade C+. Additional skill, stealth. After wearing the fish pattern cloak, the wearer can become invisible and isolate heat. The wearer's ability to block spiritual senses is also greatly improved. There was a line of small words at the back. The stealth skill of the fish pattern garment requires the Shangqing School's unique spiritual energy. Therefore, it can only be effective within the range of the Shangqing School's mountain protection formation. Obviously, this fish pattern garment had a powerful stealth effect, but it had a limited area. It was equivalent to a mission item. After Bai Xiaowen took the fish pattern garment, he said, don't worry, Miss Chen. I will do my best to help you investigate. Then, he chose to accept the mission. Chenrong smiled, saying, "Brother Liu, be careful. If you are really discovered by the Shanqing school's disciples or elders, then tell them my name." Chenrong was about to leave when Bai Xiaowen suddenly said, "Wait a minute." Chenrong turned back in confusion. "Miss Chen, do you have any extra fish pattern garments?" "I have a companion." Bai Xiaowen pointed at Cecilia beside him. The smile on Chenrong's face disappeared and he said in a low voice, "Brother Liu, this matter involves the sect's reputation. You are the only one I can trust. As for this heroine from the western region, please sit in the quiet room and don't get involved." "Okay." Bai Xiaowen sent Chenrong away. After he left, Cecilia whispered, "I always feel that Chenrong doesn't like me." "Does he like you?" "No, I don't." "Don't talk nonsense." Bai Xiaowen quickly denied it. Chapter 1476. Cecilia smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. The man I like should be the best. It would be abnormal if Chenrong didn't have any feelings for you." Bai Xiaowen sighed and thought to himself, if she had the same mentality as Cecilia, it would be boring. The fun of a handsome man was so simple and boring. Cecilia went back to the topic, "Even the Shanqing school can't find the murderer for this hero-level mission. Are you sure you can complete it?" Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "First of all, regardless of whether I can complete this mission or not, I have already received the opportunity to open up the Shanqing school by accepting this mission. This is not a loss. Anyway, if I can't complete the mission, there will be no punishment. I must accept it." After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued, "As for whether this mission can be completed or not, I am confident. The soul of the disciple named Zhou Wu has been absorbed into the Black Soul Stone. Oh, no, it should be called the Grim Reaper's Face Mask. After killing the hidden Grim Reaper, the function of the Black Soul Stone, Grim Reaper's face, had changed a lot. An inconspicuous function was that when it absorbed the soul of a powerhouse, it was not limited to Bai Xiaowen killing the powerhouse himself. Of course, there was a certain limit to this method of absorption. It was an instinctive resistance to the absorption of the Grim Reaper's face. Only the souls that were weaker than Bai Xiaowen when they were alive could not resist the absorption. Those who were stronger than Bai Xiaowen when they were alive could resist the absorption of the Grim Reaper's face. Unless this powerhouse was killed by Bai Xiaowen, they could not resist. Bai Xiaowen had completely mastered the function of the Black Soul Stone. Naturally, he could consume a certain amount of soul essence to retain the memories of this powerhouse when he was alive. Of course, it was also because Bai Xiaowen arrived at the scene not long after Zhou Wu's death. If too much time had passed, Zhou Wu's soul would have disappeared by itself. Then, the Grim Reaper's face would not have been able to attract it. Bai Xiaowen then chose to extract Zhou Wu's soul. Soon, an illusory figure with a confused expression appeared. Note that the soul absorbed here was only a remnant soul, which was different from the soul of Keats. Keats had willingly allowed himself to be absorbed, so his soul was complete, and he could communicate with the outside world through normal means. Zhou Wu definitely hadn't willingly allowed himself to be absorbed, and in addition to the fact that he had been quite powerful when he was alive, his soul had been damaged during the pulling. Zhou Wu's remnant soul couldn't see or hear things or sounds in the real world. It was impossible to get an answer from him using normal methods, unless one had Xiao Rui's soul speaker ability. However, Bai Xiaowen had his own way of communicating with the souls absorbed by Death's visage. He closed his eyes slightly and guided a trace of his spiritual consciousness into Zhou Wu's soul memory. In Zhou Wu's sea of consciousness, fragments of memories floated around like fireflies. The bright fireflies were deep memories, and the dark fireflies were meaningless shallow memories. Bai Xiaowen quickly came into contact with the memory fragments. Zhou Wu's life gradually took shape in his mind. He had entered Shanqing school as an apprentice when he was young. He first stood out among the outer sect disciples, then stood out in a competition among the outer sect disciples. A senior sister from the outer sect admired Zhou Wu, but she was rejected by Zhou Wu. After entering the inner sect, Zhou Wu worked hard and became the rising star of Shanqing school. Every time he competed in the martial arts trial, he would always improve. His daily life with the inner sect disciples, the conflicts that occurred during cultivation, Bai Xiaowen quickly erased these memories that had nothing to do with solving the case. In the end, a cluster of extremely bright memory fragments was captured by Bai Xiaowen's spiritual consciousness, and then he probed into it. Oh, this should be Zhou Wu's last memory fragment before he died. Just like before, Bai Xiaowen's perspective quickly changed to Zhou Wu's perspective. It was like watching a first-person movie, and it was impossible to make any changes to the perspective. Moreover, some of the scenes in the perspective were clear, while some were blurry. This was related to Zhou Wu's attention at that time. The things he noticed were very clear in his memory, and the things he neglected were very blurry in his memory. At this moment, Zhou Wu should be in the quiet room, concentrating on cultivating. Suddenly, the perspective turned to the door. After a short pause, the door opened, and a thin, monkey-like disciple of Shangqing school walked in. The monkey and Zhou Wu talked. Bai Xiaowen could only see the monkey's mouth open and close, as if he was watching a silent movie. Then, Zhou Wu followed the monkey out of the door. After a few turns, they stopped in a secluded and dark place. Then, the monkey turned around and suddenly revealed a look of astonishment, pointing behind Zhou Wu. This kind of clumsy trick actually worked? Bai Xiaowen secretly ridiculed. However, as an inner sect elite disciple and a seated contestant in the Tao discussion conference, Zhou Wu naturally did not fall for the trick. Instead, he immediately activated his elemental energy to protect his body. From the first-person perspective, one could see the sparkling white light of the activation of elemental energy. However, a hand pressed against the back of Zhou Wu's neck from behind, as if it had no bones, and extended towards him. The memory was greatly shaken. It was obvious that Zhou Wu was in a state of extreme shock and panic. Then, the image suddenly turned black. Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes. Zhou Wu's remnant soul had disappeared and returned to the Grim Reaper's countenance. Did you find any clues? Cecilia came over. This time, it took a long time. It's almost dawn. Bai Xiaowen said, there weren't many clues. We only found a disciple suspected to be a spy in Shangqing school. We didn't see the face of the real murderer. Bai Xiaowen then recounted the scene of the last memory fragment to Cecilia. That murderer was very powerful, Bai Xiaowen said. Zhou Wu's awareness was actually very good. He had already activated his elemental energy to protect his body. However, the other party seemed to have ignored his elemental energy and directly twisted his neck. Conservatively speaking, it had to be at least an expert at Elder Tang's level to be able to ignore Zhou Wu's elemental energy protection and directly kill him. Cecilia said, that disciple from Shangqing school who looked like a skinny monkey should be the key. From the last memory fragment, it seems that he was the one who tricked Zhou Wu out and let that person kill him. Bai Xiaowen said, the motive of the murderer is still unclear. Furthermore, we need evidence. Zhou Wu's remnant soul is not suitable to be used as direct evidence. Why? Cecilia asked curiously. The Shangqing school should have the means to communicate with remnant souls. Bai Xiaowen said, in the eyes of the righteous sects in ancient Huaxia, detaining souls is considered an evil method. It's just like how the Western magic world views necromancy as a taboo. If I hand over Zhou Wu's remnant soul, even though it will help the Shangqing school find clues, what good will it do me? Not only will there be no benefits, but I might even be regarded as a demon and be chased out of Shangqing school. Chapter 1477. Is it that serious? Cecilia was confused. But you also said that you showed your exorcism skills in front of Qinrong during the battle at the ancient Buddha temple. Qinrong didn't show any abnormalities. Bai Xiaowen smiled. Qinrong is just a special case. He can't be used as a reference for other righteous people. What's more, Zhou Wu is a disciple of the Shangqing sect. Even if the Shangqing sect doesn't say it out loud, they definitely have complaints in their hearts. The next morning, the disciples of the Shanqing school came to invite the guests to the Three Pristines Hall to discuss Taoism. The Shanqing Grand Ceremony would last for 3 days. Today's sitting discussion was merely a warm-up. The real highlight of the day was the sparring of martial arts on the second day. The elite disciples of the Shanqing sect all had to compete and display their strengths. Bai Xiaowen could see that this Shanqing ceremony was purely the process of the Shanqing school showing its strength to the righteous sections. It was similar to the military exercises in the Christian era. No wonder the ceremony was not postponed because of the strange death of a disciple. The death of a disciple was not mentioned, and there was no large-scale investigation. Bai Xiaowen didn't have such concerns. He asked Cecilia to wear a bamboo hat and a veil and sit in a corner of the hall. He found a chance to sneak away and found a person. A disciple of the Shanqing school with a thin face like a monkey. He was the one who called him out on the night of Zhou Wu's death. Bai Xiaowen learned some information about this skinny monkey from the conversations he had with the other disciples in a roundabout manner. The thin monkey's name was Lu Sanding. He was an inner sect disciple, but his cultivation was not high. He didn't participate in the martial arts discussion on the second day. Because of this, he was arranged to entertain the guests and be in charge of receiving them. After all, the Shanqing school was covered by the protective mountain array. Except for a few limited safe areas, the other areas were regarded as forbidden areas for the guests. If the guests walked blindly without the guidance of the disciples, it was very likely that they would bump into restrictions. Bai Xiaowen leaned over. "How should I address you, senior from Shanqing school?" The skinny monkey-like man was stunned. "I am Lu Sanding." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "I am Lu Wang. I have long admired the beautiful scenery of Shanqing school. It is the best paradise in the world." She wanted to go sightseeing, but she didn't dare to walk around because of Shanqing school's mountain protecting array. "I wonder if Brother Lu can give me some pointers." Lu Sanding, the skinny monkey-like Lu Sanding, was slightly stunned. Then, he smiled and said, "You're too polite, fellow Taoist Lu. You're a guest, and you want to tour the Shanqing school. Of course, it's my duty to guide you." Lu Sanding led Bai Xiaowen on a tour of the Shanqing school's strange peaks, secluded valleys, and winding water pavilions. However, Lu Sanding seemed to have a lot on his mind. Although he tried his best to hide it, the way he pretended to be relaxed could be seen by anyone else, let alone Bai Xiaowen. When they reached the entrance of a valley, they could faintly hear the sound of a waterfall. Lu Sanding said, "Brother Lu, this place is called Sword Testing Valley. There are 3 hanging springs and waterfalls, and it is one of the most beautiful places in the inner sect." Bai Xiaowen thanked him, and the two of them walked into the valley together. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. According to the map Chen Rong gave him, Sword Testing Valley was one of the safe zones of the mountain protecting array. Sword Testing Valley was a place where the Shanqing school's disciples sparred. It wasn't a secret place, so naturally, there wouldn't be any restrictions set up. Bai Xiaowen looked around and didn't see anyone around. Sword Testing Valley would only become lively tomorrow. Today, whether it was the disciples of Shanqing school or the guests from other sects, they were all sitting in the 3 Pure Ones hall and discussing. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Brother Lu, you seem to have something on your mind." Lu Sanding was stunned and smiled. "I am indeed a little absent-minded." "Brother Lu, please don't laugh at me, what's on your mind? If it's convenient, can you tell me?" Lu Sanding waved his hand and smiled. "I'm ashamed to say this, but I have a crush on a senior sister in the inner sect. However, she seems to be neither close nor distant to me. She refuses to become my cultivation partner. Brother Lu, please don't laugh at me." Bai Xiaowen gave Lu Sanding a thumbs up in his heart. Lu Sanding's ability to lie through his teeth was not bad. He could even casually talk about relationship issues. If it was someone else who didn't know, even someone as smart as Bai Xiaowen, they would have been fooled. Bai Xiaowen knew this was a rare opportunity, so he went straight to the point. "Brother Lu, are you sure you don't have something on your mind because of Zhou Wu?" Lu Sanding's eyes narrowed slightly, but he quickly reacted and forced a smile. Brother Lu, what are you talking about? I don't understand a single word you're saying. Bai Xiaowen laughed loudly. Lu Sanding, you lured Zhou Wu to a secluded place last night and colluded with others to kill Zhou Wu. I saw it all with my own eyes. Don't try to deny it. Lu Sanding's expression changed drastically. He looked around and was relieved when he saw that there was no one else around. Ha! Lu Wang, you're really digging your own grave. Lu Sanding's voice became a few degrees gloomier. He reached out and wiped his face, revealing the face of a skinny middle-aged man. He had a small mustache, and his eyes were full of shrewdness. He looked a bit like a landlord's accountant. Although I don't know what you're up to, the holy sex plan cannot be disrupted. As an insider, it's better for you to die as soon as possible. Ha ha ha. Lu Sanding waved his hand and 4 white talismans flew out. They shot towards the 4 corners. Suddenly, the sound of the waterfall and the wind outside disappeared. Heaven and earth were silent. Obviously, these 4 talismans formed a temporary isolation array. It could at least block out sound. Lu Sanding suddenly pulled out a long white banner and waved it at Bai Xiaowen. He shouted, "Fall!" Bai Xiaowen felt a wave of drowsiness. He felt as if his soul was about to leave his body. However, Bai Xiaowen still stood firmly. The pure true inner force in his body automatically circulated and easily dispelled the drowsiness. The true inner force's base priority was as high as 8 points. If this was in the world of the awakened ones, the result of priority suppression would be immunity to the opponent's control skills. However, this was the world of the evolved ones. The result of priority suppression was that the opponent's control skills were greatly weakened. This not only meant the duration of the control, but also the power of the control. If it was an attack on an ordinary person, it would be enough to cause their soul to leave their body and cause them to fall into a deep sleep. However, Bai Xiaowen only felt a wave of drowsiness that was quickly dispelled by itself. Not only that, Lu Sanding's rash actions also triggered the Eye of Evolution's counterattack. His true inner force was restless and tried to enter his left eye. This time, Bai Xiaowen did not suppress the flow of his true inner force. He also wanted to see how strong the counterattack of the Eye of Evolution's true inner force was in the evolved one's plane. Ah! Lu Sanding screamed. He threw the banner away and squatted down with his hands on his head. Blood flowed out of his nostrils. Bai Xiaowen could see that Lu Sanding's health points had suddenly dropped by 20%. Moreover, the circulation of energy in his body was greatly disrupted. If he had to find a word to describe it, it would be qi deviation. Chapter 1478. Bai Xiaowen checked silently. The Eye of Evolution had just used up about 300 true inner force to counterattack, which was about 1/4 of Bai Xiaowen's true inner force. This Lu Sanding is now a level 14 commander. His spiritual energy value is as high as 1800 points. It seems that the Eye of Evolution's counterattack consumes true inner force based on the difference in strength between me and my opponent. Maybe the greater the difference in strength, the more true inner force it consumes. Bai Xiaowen summoned the Wrath Claw, the Death Knight, and other elite troops to beat up Lu Sanding while he thought about the Eye of Evolution. If I encounter an opponent who is far stronger than me in the future, will the Eye of Evolution drain my true inner force when they use confusion or soul-stealing skills on me? What should I do if it's not enough? Bai Xiaowen would rather use the Eye of Evolution's counterattack mechanism to deduct all spiritual energy points, just like the awakened stage. Of course, in the evolved stage, it was equivalent to deducting spiritual crystals. In his opinion, anything that could be done with money was not a problem. Although Bai Xiaowen did not have many spiritual crystals now, he believed in his ability to make money. This had been proven a long time ago. But no matter what, Lu Sanding in front of him had suffered a great loss. After being counterattacked by the Eye of Evolution, Lu Sanding's spiritual energy was in a mess. He was in a similar state as the tree demon in the ancient Buddha temple who was hit by Bai Xiaowen's sword. The only difference was that his health points were not as bad. The consequence of his spiritual energy being in a mess was that he could not use his spiritual energy to defend himself. The attacks of the commander-level summon creatures were really sharp. Lu Sanding struggled to stand up and reached into his pocket. Bai Xiaowen stretched out his hand and quickly switched to the charm of confusion in his mind. Suddenly, a yellow light flew out from his fingertips. The charm of confusion was extremely fast and hit Lu Sanding. This time, Bai Xiaowen's true inner force carried a wisp of Bai Xiaowen's spiritual thoughts and broke through Lu Sanding's meridians with irresistible force. Lu Sanding's spiritual energy was considered strong, but it was in a mess at the moment. It was like an army of scattered sand. Of course, it could not resist Bai Xiaowen's true inner force. Consciousness struggle. Bai Xiaowen continued to infuse his true inner force into Lu Sanding's body. Together with his spiritual senses, Lu Sanding's consciousness was completely destroyed. In terms of consciousness strength, Lu Sanding was far from Bai Xiaowen's. Bewitching talisman, successfully controlled. Master. Lu Sanding knelt on one knee with a respectful look on his face. Bai Xiaowen looked around. Fortunately, the battle had been brief, and Lu Sanding had set up an array to isolate sound and spiritual energy fluctuations. Therefore, no one had noticed them. The reason why Lu Sanding had set up the formation in advance was because he had confidence in the long banner. Bai Xiaowen first checked the long banner. He already had a guess in his heart. With one glance, Bai Xiaowen's eyes narrowed slightly. It was the Wraith banner of the green equipment set. Moreover, it was a complete Wraith banner, not an incomplete product like the Sand Mountain branch. As expected, it is related to the Black Sky sect. Bai Xiaowen quickly put away the Wraith banner. He ordered Lu Sanding to get up and pretend to be a tour guide to take him on a tour. Bai Xiaowen separated a part of his consciousness and used the memory-sharing method to spy on Lu Sanding's memories. Lu Sanding had been controlled by the bewitching talisman. His consciousness had been destroyed, and his memories were scattered, with only scattered fragments. However, Bai Xiaowen still managed to read some useful information. The person in front of him was not Lu Sanding, but a protector of the Black Sky sect in disguise. The real Lu Sanding had died long ago. And why did the Black Sky sect sneak into the Shangqing school this time? Of course, it was not to embarrass the Shangqing school. The evil sects did not value false reputation. Each and every one of them were people who would not get up early without benefits. What they wanted was the prize for the martial arts debate on the second day. The Shangqing treasure. The Shangqing treasure was a secret of the Shangqing school. Only the sect masters of each generation had the right to practice it. The martial arts debate on the second day was a performance competition for the inner disciples of the Shangqing school. The guests would not participate. The disciple who won would naturally receive the Shangqing treasure and become the next sect master's chosen disciple. In order to obtain the Shangqing treasure, the Black Sky sect had planned for the demon sect experts to pretend to be Shangqing disciples and participate in the competition. Lu Sanding hadn't been chosen to be the champion. His disguise skills weren't very good. Once he made a move, the evil aura of his spiritual power would easily be seen through. The real chosen one was called Denging Nan. Even though he was a member of the demon sect, he was a genius of both righteous and evil cultivation. His elemental energy was vast and righteous. With him making a move, no one would be able to see through it. Most importantly, Denging Nan was not the mastermind behind the assassination of Zhou Wu last night. Due to the incomplete memory fragments, Bai Xiaowen did not know the full picture of the Black Sky sect's plan. However, he could at least deduce that the Black Sky sect was determined to win this time. The number of disciples who snuck in through various identities was definitely not a small number. Even if the martial arts debate did not reach the goal, the Black Sky sect should still have a hidden card. Bai Xiaowen controlled Lu Sanding. He originally wanted to open Lu Sanding's storage ring and make a small fortune. He could also collect evidence for this mission. Unfortunately, after Lu Sanding was controlled by Bai Xiaowen, he could no longer open his storage ring. Bai Xiaowen could only search Lu Sanding's body, hoping to find an identity token or something similar. However, he did not find anything. Thinking about it, how could Lu Sanding put the Black Sky Sect identity token on himself? Of course it would be safest to put it in a storage ring. Right, take off the disguise on your face. Bai Xiaowen suddenly ordered. Lu Sanding was incomparably obedient. He reached out and wiped his face. Immediately, the face of a skinny middle-aged man appeared. He looked like a weasel. Okay, put on the disguise. Bai Xiaowen was slightly relieved. If he could not find any evidence in the end, he could send Lu Sanding to Chenrong and have him take off the disguise. This could be considered half a witness. Of course, this way, the mission completion rate would be very low. Returning to the quiet room in the guest room, Bai Xiaowen saw Cecilia. How did you feel about today's conference? Bai Xiaowen asked with a smile. Not much, my legs are almost numb. Moreover, I did not really understand what they were talking about. Cecilia said very honestly. However, every hour, I would receive a notification from the spirit realm, saying that my understanding of the Milky Way diagram has improved. There were 4 notifications in a row. I can also feel that my understanding of the profession's classics has improved significantly. It is comparable to my progress of a month of cultivation. There is such a thing? Bai Xiaowen secretly lamented that he did not make it in time. Cecilia glanced at the skinny monkey Lu Sanding standing respectfully beside Bai Xiaowen. She smiled and said, "Your progress is very fast." Chapter 1479. Prime Clear Treasure Tome? It sounds a bit like a class tome. Cecilia said. Bai Xiaowen nodded. It should be right, and it's at least a Lord-level class tome, no lower than the peace technique. Then would the Black Sky Church have other evolvers mixed in? For example, that Xian Feng. Cecilia said, their goal is to seize this precious Lord-level tome? Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Even if the Black Sky Church has evolvers mixed in this time's Prime Clear ceremony, their goal shouldn't be the Prime Clear Treasure Tome. Evolvers want to open dual professions, they need the Tyrant's Proof, and you know how difficult it is to obtain the Tyrant's Proof. If I were an evolver on the side of the Black Sky Church, I would only take the opportunity to plunder some of the spiritual treasures of the Shangqing school. This is the real gain. If it wasn't used for a second profession, then the class tome's effect would be much lower. Of course, it wasn't completely useless, at least the skills recorded in it could be learned by evolvers as long as their energy was compatible, such as the second volume of the peace technique. Cecilia then asked, what should we do next? Bai Xiaowen said, the Black Sky Church has only shown me the first layer of their plan, which is to let the demon sect expert Deng Yingnan pretend to be a disciple of the Shangqing school to seize the right to inherit the Prime Clear Treasure Tome. But from the second banner of resentment, it can be seen that the Black Sky Church has a backup plan. If scheming won't work, it will very likely evolve into open robbery. Open robbery? That's going to be an all-out war with the Shangqing school. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. The Shangqing school is loose on the outside but tight on the inside. They should have taken precautions. But the Black Sky Church came prepared, and even prepared this kind of set-type artifact in advance. If it's an all-out war, I don't think the Shangqing school will win. But the Shangqing school's hard power is still very strong. As long as it's properly arranged, it can definitely fight with the Black Sky Church. Next, I'll contact Chenrong. This is a good opportunity for us to take advantage of it. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, I'll ask Chenrong to let you leave early. The next day, the martial arts conference began as scheduled. One by one, the Shangqing school's inner sanctum disciples displayed their strengths and competed in the sword-testing valley, advancing one level after another. The strength displayed by these young disciples was praised by all the guests. The Shangqing school was indeed a big school with a strong foundation and a bright future. It was amazing that the young disciples had such a high cultivation. Among the younger generation of disciples, there were 3 people who were extremely outstanding. They were like cranes in a flock of chickens. The only female disciple was Chenrong. Bai Xiaowen realized that Qianrong's strength had indeed increased a lot since the battle at the ancient Buddha temple half a month ago. Now, he should be considered a rare leader and was moving towards the Overlord template. It was easier for the natives to upgrade their template than the evolvers. Take Qianrong for example. At first, he studied the basic classics of Shanqing school, and he might only be at the elite level. But later, for some reason, he was chosen by the higher-ups of the sect. They would teach him high-level classics, and he would be promoted to the leader level. As for now, Qianrong must have been taught even more powerful classics. For the natives, as long as the classics they cultivated were of the same origin and their aptitudes were good enough, they could go from shallow to deep and continuously learn more powerful classics to upgrade their template. For the evolvers, it was not easy to find classics that were of the same origin. At least, it was much more difficult than the sect disciples. For example, Qiao Rui. Where could she find a more profound homogenized classic than the Guangling Secret Manual? Even if she found it, it was unknown whether she could learn it or not. Bai Xiaowen even suspected that Qianrong might have already been chosen as the next sect leader. She might have already learned the Shangqing treasure book. Other than Qianrong, there was another powerful disciple called Shangjin. He was the eldest senior brother of this generation of disciples. Needless to say, he was very powerful. The one that attracted the most attention was a disciple called Di Hui. He defeated 3 people in a row in the first round, shocking everyone. According to the discussion of the guests and Shanqing school disciples, this Di Hui had never revealed his talent. His natural disposition was also rather reclusive. He belonged to the category of little transparent people. Who would have thought that he had actually concealed such a powerful strength? Bai Xiaowen kept a close eye on this Di Hui. Actually, this person was the devil sect expert that the Black Sky sect had planted, Danging Nan. At this time, Bai Xiaowen also understood why the Black Sky sect wanted to kill Zhou Wu. The Black Sky sect expert had somehow obtained the Dao Discussion Assembly's matchup area. Zhou Wu and Danging Nan were placed in the same area. The first round was equivalent to the group stage. The opponents in the same area would engage in a chaotic battle. There was also no restriction on multiple people joining hands. But in the end, only one person could advance and participate in the later elimination rounds. Zhou Wu's strength was very strong. If Danging Nan wanted to defeat him, he would also suffer great injuries. And the group stage's chaotic battle system made it even more possible for other people to pick up scraps. Even if Danging Nan's true strength was slightly stronger than Zhou Wu's, it was still not guaranteed that he would advance. Therefore, in order to ensure that he would advance, the Black Sky sect dispatched a top expert to assassinate Zhou Wu. The later elimination rounds were individual battles. There were no variables that other people could pick up scraps. But this move, in Bai Xiaowen's view, was a real dirty move. The Shanqing school's higher-ups were not fools. How could Zhou Wu's death not make them vigilant? And then, with Zhou Wu in the same group, Danging Nan, who had suddenly emerged today, would definitely be placed under a magnifying glass by the Shanqing school's higher-ups to observe. Even if Danging Nan could win, would the Shanqing school's higher-ups really pass him the Shangqing treasured book? The only possibility was that the Shanqing school valued face. Under the watchful eyes of all parties and sects, they would not go back on their word and cancel the predetermined prize. From the behavior of the Shanqing school, which had a serial murder case and still held a grand ceremony, it was possible that they really valued face. The competition continued. The elite disciples of the Shanqing school who had advanced from the 8 districts were going through the elimination rounds. Danging Nan showed his strength in the elimination rounds. He eliminated 2 people in a row, skipped the top 4, and entered the final in advance. On the other side, Qianrong and the senior brother Shangjin met in the top 4. For some reason, Shangjin voluntarily admitted defeat. Bai Xiaowen secretly speculated that Shangjin might have deliberately admitted defeat because he liked this junior sister. From the way Shangjin looked at Qianrong, it was possible. Anyway, the final was between Qianrong and Danging Nan. Seeing the two of them facing each other, Bai Xiaowen suddenly understood. Dang Yingnan's Shangqing talisman was exquisite, but it was completely restrained by Qinrong. This kind of restraint was not the suppression of strength, but the suppression of the talisman itself. In other words, the talisman used by Qinrong was superior to Dang Yingnan's high-level Shangqing talisman. The higher-ups of the Shangqing school were not fools. They must have passed on a part of the Shangqing treasured book to Qinrong in advance. Chapter 1480. In this way, Qinrong would be able to suppress Dang Yingnan with talismans. As everyone knew, the Shangqing school's most mainstream and strongest method was talismans. Dang Yingnan could only use talismans to fight against Qinrong in the finals. Even if his unorthodox methods were stronger, he couldn't use them. Otherwise, the Shangqing school would have a reason to suspect his identity and force him to prove his innocence and explain the origin of his unorthodox methods. Otherwise, he would be beaten to death. If Dang Yingnan used demonic methods, the consequences would be even worse. He would be beaten to death. Senior Sister Chen is so powerful. Senior Sister Chen is about to win. Dang Yingnan, you'd better admit defeat quickly. The laughter of the disciples of the Shangqing sect rang out one after another. It seemed that Qinrong was quite popular among the younger generation of the Shangqing sect. That's right, after all, they were all young men in their 20s and 30s. Young men would definitely view a senior sister like Qinrong, who had such beauty, temperament, and strength, as a goddess. Dang Yingnan used several talismans in a row, but they were all easily resolved by Qinrong. Talisman array! Dang Yingnan shouted loudly and waved his sleeves. Talismans shot out one after another. Each talisman turned into a talisman pattern in the air. These talismans connected with each other and formed an exquisite three-dimensional array in the air. Dang Yingnan poured spiritual power into his palm and suddenly slapped the miniature array. With a boom, the talismans of the array flew in all directions. As a whole, the miniature spell formation suddenly expanded into a large-scale spell formation, enveloping him and Qinrong, who was across from him. Big Dipper Array! Di Hui can actually use the Big Dipper Array. Not only were the young disciples astonished, but even the group of Shangqing school elders who were watching the battle were astonished. Some people even looked regretful. Di Hui just based on this Big Dipper talisman formation, he had the qualifications to inherit the prime clear treasured tome. Unfortunately, Qinrong was already the sect master's chosen successor. Moreover, Di Hui's identity was unknown. Whether it was the Shangqing treasure book or the position of sect master, he had no fate with them. Bai Xiaowen was watching from the side. In his vision, after Dang Yingnan set up the Big Dipper array, each of the 7 talismans shot out a ray of light and projected on his body. Dang Yingnan's spiritual power suddenly increased by a lot and was close to that of a senior like Elder Tangren. Under the observation of the eyes of evolution, Dang Yingnan's spiritual power column became 1850 plus 210. What does this mean? Does it mean that Dang Yingnan's spiritual power suddenly increased? This is close to the explosive power of a Lord-tier monster. Bai Xiaowen guessed. Dang Idos to use Dipper Array 2s to stop. Is to use to wins to win? Is. Ronglong Qinrong's face was very calm, and she only waved at Dang Yingnan. Dang Yingnan's mouth revealed a smile of determination. He opened his palm and poured his elemental energy into it. A talisman was formed. This talisman emitted a blazing white ray of light. Just from its might, it was more than twice as strong as the previous talismans. However, after Dang Yingnan condensed this talisman, his remaining spiritual power dropped by a lot. Bai Xiaowen understood that this should be the so-called Dipper Digger's blessing. It allowed each of Dang Yingnan's talismans to have an additional 210 points of spiritual power. Of course, its might would be multiplied, but it would also greatly increase the consumption of his spiritual power. Bai Xiaowen was somewhat worried for Qinrong. In the plan that he and Qinrong had discussed, Qinrong had to win. Qinrong's face was still very calm. She said, "Junior Marshal Brother Di Hui, you're indeed very skillful. In terms of talisman skills, you're better than me. Senior Martial Sister, it's not too late to admit defeat. Danging Nan frowned slightly. Chenrong shook her head and said, this time, I've won. She waved her hand, and 2 runes formed the pattern of a talisman. One of them flew to the left and the other to the right. Danging Nan's face changed. He immediately waved his hand and shot out the condensed talisman. He shouted, look at my 7-star sword talisman. That talisman turned into a shiny small sword in the air and flew toward Chenrong. However, Chenrong's 2 talismans hit the talisman that Danging Nan used to set up the formation first. The 7 talismans of the 7 stars formation intertwined with each other. In the end, all of them moved away from Danging Nan's body and shot toward Chenrong's body. Danging Nan's aura rapidly weakened and returned to its initial level. On the other hand, Chenrong's aura increased sharply, and his spiritual energy increased by 210 points. Even the sword talisman that was already shot out became dim and lightless. Chenrong easily blocked it. How can you control my Big Dipper talisman formation? After Danging Nan shouted, he suddenly revealed a look of realization. I understand now. This must be a technique from the Prime Clarity Treasure Tome. You learned the Prime Clarity Treasure Tome in advance. Chenrong didn't say a word and let Danging Nan yell. After Danging Nan finished speaking, Chenrong said, Junior Martial Brother Di Hui, you've already lost. The Big Dipper talisman formation is already under my control, but it still consumes your elemental energy. It's equivalent to me borrowing your elemental energy to attack you. No matter how you fight, I'm already in an invincible position. Bai Xiaowen was stupefied. The Prime Clarity Treasure Tome could actually seize control of talisman formations. For example, Danging Nan used a large amount of elemental energy to give himself a strength of 7 stars buff. Every time he attacked, his power would double, but the price was that his spiritual energy consumption would double. Once Chenrong attacked, he would easily snatch the strength of 7 stars from Danging Nan's body and use it as his own to double the power of his attacks. However, the price of double the consumption of spiritual energy would still be borne by Danging Nan, who set up the formation. This method is too shameless. I also want to learn it. No wonder only the headmaster could inherit the Prime Clarity Treasure Tome. At least for the talismans of the Shanqing school, it was simply more powerful than the Imperial Sword. Danging Nan lowered his head and let out a long sigh. Okay, I admit defeat. After saying this, Danging Nan suddenly raised his head. But I'm not convinced. A Shanqing school elder said, the winner and loser has already been decided. Di Hui, don't let the guests see you as a joke. Why aren't you leaving? Danging Nan shouted loudly, the school has already passed the Prime Clarity Treasure Tome to Chenrong. She's already decided to be the next headmaster. Then why are we, the disciples, still fighting over it? We're just deceiving ourselves and others. Shut up. You don't have any evidence to back up your words. If you don't leave, I'm going to enforce the school rules. Another Shanqing school elder shouted angrily. Suddenly, a gloomy voice sounded from among the guests. Ha ha ha. I've really experienced the despicable methods of the Shanqing school. Chapter 1481. The voice clearly came from the VIP seats, but there was no trace of it. Even the guests in the VIP seats looked around blankly, trying to find the source of the voice. An elder of the Shanqing school, who was wearing a white robe and had a clear face, stood up. He glanced at the VIP seats and shouted, which guest has a problem with this? Please come out. Don't hide your head and show your tail. Don't be a villain. The voice was deep and powerful, like a great bell. The bronze bell on the ridge of the sword testing valley buzzed. The VIP seats were full of discussions. Bai Xiaowen heard clearly that the elder of the Shanqing school who had just spoken was called Chen Jia. He was now the great elder of the Shanqing school, and he was very powerful. Bai Xiaowen's eye of evolution involuntarily glanced over. Chen Jia was also level 14. But his spiritual energy was as high as 2,630 points. He was obviously stronger than Elder Tangren, who was also a level 14 lord. Grand Elder Chen's aura silenced the crowd. However, the strange voice was not afraid. It sounded again. This is supposed to be a martial arts battle, but they decided on it internally. The Shangqing school can do this, and they still have the face to call others villains? Qinjia suddenly shouted, "Come out." A shining golden talisman shot out and pointed at a corner of the VIP seats. The talisman turned into a small golden sword in the air like a swimming dragon. Elder Qinjia's sword talisman was much faster and fiercer than Dangingnan's sword talisman. The sword talisman pointed at a chubby man. The chubby man was very agile. He straightened his body and jumped up, landing in the sword-testing valley. Qinjia snorted. The golden sword talisman turned slightly and chased after the chubby man. The chubby man said sarcastically, "What? You want to kill me?" Before he could finish his sentence, the fatty's body suddenly emitted a crackling sound. It was as if he had grown a foot in the air. His body became slender and tall, and blood-red energy surrounded his body. It made him look like a demon god bathed in blood. The golden sword talisman flew over, but it was caught by a giant hand made of pure blood-colored light. With a crack, the sword talisman was crushed into bits of light. Blood demon hand. Thousand hands human butcher. Exclamations came one after another. Qinjia's gaze was cold. He said, "So it's the left protector of the Black Sky sect, Thousand Hands Human Butcher Qiuzhenli. You're not hiding in the Black Sky sect's nest, but you're causing trouble at the Shangqing ceremony. Today, the heroes of the righteous path have gathered here, you will not be able to escape justice." Qiuzhenli laughed loudly and said, "The righteous path is a bunch of ugliness, what do I have to fear? Come out." Following Qiuzhenli's loud laughter, the hidden experts of the Black Sky sect revealed their true appearances one by one. Some disguised themselves as inner sect disciples, some disguised themselves as guests. Looking carefully, there were actually as many as 12 people who erupted with a cold aura at the same time. As for these 12 people, each of them took out a long banner. Their positions were scattered in every corner of the sword-testing valley. They cooperated with each other from afar and actually formed an unknown formation. Qiuzhenli shouted, "Sheiji, soul-refining formation." The leader of the 12 Black Sky sect experts was a woman. She had a graceful figure and wore a black veil. Her body was faintly discernible in the black silk. The wraith banner in her hand was twice as long as the others. Waving it, black fog visible to the naked eye spread. Right protector of the Black Sky sect, Snake Princess Longyu. Qinjia's pupils shrank. He suddenly found that his spirit power was greatly suppressed. Not only Qinjia, all the righteous path experts in the Shangqing Valley cried out. "What's going on? My spirit power isn't listening to me." "Me too." "It's the work of the devil sect's demons." Bai Xiaowen also felt that the circulation of his true spirit power was slightly blocked. The spirit world's laws notified, you are affected by the soul-refining formation. Every second, you can stack a layer of wraith, at most 10 layers. Every layer of wraith will cause your spirit power output to decrease by 10%, and your movement speed to decrease by 10%. Determining priority. Based on your basic priority, 8, every layer of wraith's effect on you is reduced to 3%. You can actively mobilize your spirit power to clear all the layers of wraith. This is a pleasant surprise. Bai Xiaowen wasn't in a hurry to clear the layers of wraith. After all, the total amount of wraith's spirit power output was reduced by 30%, and there was a 30% reduction in speed. It wasn't obvious. Moreover, in Bai Xiaowen's plan, it wasn't time for him to make a move. Within the range of the soul-refining formation, most of the righteous path experts had lost their spirit power and mobility. Only a few suzerain experts could rely on their priority to reduce a portion of the wraith's effect. However, their strength was at least reduced by more than half. The thousand-armed butcher Qiuzhenli laughed loudly. The blood-colored light around him turned into a large hand that grabbed the air. Its target was none other than Chen Rong. the devil sect's target is the prime clear treasure tome. Chenjia roared, Ronger, retreat. However, Chenrong was already trapped by the 10 layers of Wraith's wraith. How could he move? The blood demon hand that Qiu Zhenli had conjured easily caught it in the palm of his hand. The Shanqing school elders were furious. They gritted their teeth and mobilized their spirit power to form various talismans to attack Qiu Zhenli. Under the effects of the soul-refining formation, every time they attacked, the consumption of their spirit power would multiply, and the power would be reduced by more than half. Blood demon hands appeared on the surface of Qiu Zhenli's body. As expected of the thousand-armed butcher title, he repelled the talismans that flew towards him. However, no matter how strong he wasn't a king stage expert. Even if the Shanqing school elder's strength was limited, Qiu Zhenli still couldn't withdraw his spirit power when they attacked him together. Especially when he used one of his blood demon hands to grab Chenrong, he couldn't withdraw it. Sheiji, help me! Qiu Zhenli roared. Disciples of the Black Sky Sect, listen to my command. 12 Wraith Banner combine. Sheiji's gentle voice sounded. Then, she raised the Wraith Banner in her hand. 10,000 Soul Banner, come. The other 11 disciples of the Black Sky Sect were also elders of the Black Sky Sect. However, the standards of these Black Sky Sect elders were naturally far inferior to those of the Shanqing school. At most, they were rare leader stage experts, and none of them were overlords. At this moment, the 11 of them worked together to activate the Wraith Banner in their hands. 11 streaks of blood-colored black fog surged towards the 10,000 Soul Banner in Sheiji's hand. Qiu Zhenli laughed loudly. Once the Wraith Banner is combined and the 10,000 Soul Banner is forged, even if the leader of the Shanqing school appears, he won't be able to stop us. The Shanqing treasure tome belongs to my Black Sky Sect. Obviously, Qiu Zhenli treated Chenrong as a living Shanqing treasure tome. However, when Sheiji waved the 10,000 Soul Banner, a sudden change occurred. One of the streaks of blood-colored black fog suddenly moved in the opposite direction and collided with the other streaks of blood-colored black fog. Suddenly, the 11 streaks of blood-colored black fog spiraling in the field became chaotic and began to explode one after another. Chapter 1482. Although the original 11 streaks of blood mist and black gas were all spinning at high speeds, they were orderly and in accordance with the mysteries of the 10,000 souls formation. One of the streaks of blood mist and black gas had betrayed at the crucial moment. It was like a car suddenly driving in the wrong direction on a highway. The consequences were naturally disastrous. This was not as simple as 2 streaks of black gas colliding. This was a chain reaction that caused a drastic change. Rumbling sounds could be heard as streaks of black gas exploded in advance. Every time a streak of black gas exploded, Sheiji, who was waving the 10,000 Soul Banner, as well as the 11 elders of the Black Sky Sect, would suffer heavy injuries. It was as if they were attacked by themselves without spirit energy protecting their bodies. Sheiji and the other elders of the Black Sky Sect raised the Wraith Banner while vomiting blood. Sheiji roared in anger, "Lu Buchen, what are you doing?" Lu Buchen was the demonic sect expert who had disguised himself as Lu Sanding. He, who had the Wraith Banner, was also one of the participants of the soul-refining formation. Lu Sanding was also vomiting blood. However, his face was expressionless as he continued to wave the Wraith Banner with all his might. The thousand-armed butcher Qiu Zhenli was also indescribably shocked. However, his reaction was extremely fast. He immediately gave up on Chenrong, who was already in his hands, and shot towards Lu Sanding like lightning. He had to get rid of Lu Sanding, take over the Wraith Banner in his hands, and reorganize the soul-refining formation. Otherwise, with every second he delayed, the righteous faction experts present would recover a portion of their strength. The dozen or so experts that the Black Sky Sect had spent so much effort to infiltrate would definitely not be enough. Qiu Zhenli's reaction was very fast. However, the elders of the Shanqing school were not slow either. Although he didn't know why Lu Sanding had changed sides at the last moment, he obviously couldn't let Qiu Zhenli have his way. Numerous talismans flew out and transformed into numerous chains in the air, and they blocked Qiu Zhenli's path. Sheiji screamed and threw away the 10,000-soul banner in her hands. She could no longer hold on. The abandonment of the 10,000-soul banner directly caused the soul-refining array's domain to fall into chaos and collapse. Momentarily, a vast and violent energy surged towards Sheiji like a shocking wave. This wave was especially powerful. If Sheiji had been trying to maintain the soul-shackling array previously, she had suffered an attack equivalent to her own body's spiritual energy, then forcefully removing the soul-shackling array this time was equivalent to becoming the outlet for the 12 people's violent spiritual energy. In other words, the spiritual energy of the 12 people was attacking her at the same time. Sheiji's body shrank, and her entire body became soft and boneless, as if she was an illusion. Discarding the 10,000-soul banner meant that she no longer needed to maintain the soul-refining array. This also meant that she had enough spiritual energy to cast a self-preservation spell. With a loud boom, sand and pebbles were sent flying. Sheiji spat out another mouthful of blood. She shrieked, "Left Protector, please forgive me for not keeping you company." With a tearing sound, a black gas flashed as Sheiji rapidly flew out of the Sword Trial Valley. Sheiji had chosen the perfect time to escape and betray her teammates. The remaining power of the spirit-refining formation was still present, and the righteous faction people present were powerless to stop it. If she had delayed any longer, the righteous faction would have gained the upper hand, and she would not have been able to leave even if she wanted to. Qiu Zhenli was fuming with anger as he silently cursed, "Damn woman." He knew that it was time for him to fight for his life, and he formed a seal. Instantly, his entire body emitted a bloody light, and the talisman chains in front of him were all shattered. Qiu Zhenli's demonic blood hand directly grabbed Lu Sanding's neck, and the violent spiritual energy broke through Lu Sanding's spiritual energy defense. He was lifted up and slammed heavily onto the ground, causing his brain to splatter. However, at this moment, there was a shadow that beautifully flew towards the center of the soul-refining array. Its target was the 10,000-soul banner that Sheiji had abandoned. "You're courting death." Qiu Zhenli looked on coldly and did not stop it. Was the 10,000-soul banner important? Of course it was important. The difficulty of refining it was 10 times higher than normal grievance spirit banners. The headquarters had used all their strength to refine it. Why did Qiu Zhenli not stop it? The reason was simple. Although the soul-refining formation had collapsed, the core of the 10,000-soul banner was still there. This caused the 11 balls of black fog to continue to collide within the area covered by the formation. It was like a chain car accident that had gone out of control, and the violent spiritual energy wreaked havoc everywhere. To pass through this area and seize the 10,000-soul banner, one would have to endure the violent spiritual energy attacks of Sheiji and the 11 elders of the Black Sky sect. Unless that person understood the mysteries of the soul-refining formation and had extremely good eyesight, they would be able to avoid the attacks of the spiritual energy control. Even Qiu Zhenli, who understood the soul-refining formation, could not enter the formation unharmed and obtain the 10,000-soul banner. Qiu Zhenli thought to himself, having this reckless person to share some of the chaotic spiritual energy of the soul-refining formation for me is not a bad thing. Once he dies, I will take the opportunity to seize control of the 10,000-soul banner, and replace Sheiji and Lu Sanding to control the 2 positions of the formation. As long as the soul-refining formation is not broken, there is still a chance for things to turn around. The idea was good, but from the corner of Qiu Zhenli's eyes, he saw that the black shadow was twisting and turning like an agile loach. It passed through the area of the soul-refining formation's violent spirit energy and was actually unscathed. How is this possible? Qiu Zhenli's eyes widened. Like casually picking a peach, the black shadow lightly plucked the 10,000-soul banner that was floating in the air. Then, he held the 2 ends of the 10,000-soul banner horizontally with both hands, lowered it, and raised his knee. Crack. Stop. Before Qiu Zhenli could finish his words, he saw the 10,000-soul banner that the main altar treasured like a treasure being gently and skillfully broken into 2. The black shadow muttered, I thought it would be difficult. So it is about the same as breaking bamboo. What is this? After the 10,000 soul banner was broken, the cries of countless vengeful souls sounded in an instant. Then, the countless soul shadows quickly overlapped, condensed, and finally turned into a round bead that was neither jade nor stone. An order came from the Black Shadow's mind. He immediately put the round bead away without hesitation. You! Qiu Zhenli was furious. He carefully looked at the Black Shadow's face. He had to remember this person and find a chance to take revenge. The main culprit who destroyed the 10,000 soul banner had a muscular body. He wore a strange double-breasted ceremonial robe, but his chest muscles were exposed. He looked very rough. His eye sockets were deep, and there were thick dark circles under his eyes. He had a gloomy and cold temperament. Strange, from the breathing, heartbeat, and blood circulation, he doesn't look like a human. Qiu Zhenli was shocked. Is it the turtle breathing technique? Breath-concealing technique? Or crouching dragon sleep? However, now was not the time to delve into it. Qiu Zhenli's figure was like lightning, shooting out of the sword-testing valley. The 10,000 soul banner was already destroyed, and the soul-refining formation could not be reconstructed. The experts of the righteous faction were about to recover their strength. If they delayed any longer, they would only lose their lives. Qiu Zhenli could only leave behind a ruthless sentence. Friend, the Holy Church will remember you. The mountains will not change, and the rivers will flow forever. We will meet again. The two protectors of the Black Sky cult fled one after another. The remaining 10 elders of the Black Sky cult met with bloody misfortune. After the experts of the righteous faction recovered, they easily captured all of the heavily injured elders of the Black Sky cult. Chapter 1483. The Black Sky cult's long-planned surprise attack could be considered to have ended in failure. However, the shock it left behind for the various righteous sects was far from over. So close, so close. Strange, that Lu Sanding should have been replaced by the Black Sky cult's demon Lu Buchan. Why did he change sides at the last minute? Not sure. It's a pity that Lu Buchan was killed on the spot by the 1,000-armed man Butcher. There's no way to find out the inside story. Someone spoke of kits again. Fortunately, someone rushed into the demonic array area and destroyed the 10,000 soul banner. Otherwise, if Qiu Zhenli got his hands on it, it would definitely cause another twist and turn. Who destroyed the 10,000 soul banner? He should know some inside story. Hiss. Why do I feel that the one who destroyed the 10,000 soul banner wasn't a living person? You think so too? But he clearly has his own will. He doesn't look like a puppet creation, nor does he look like he's being controlled by someone. Perhaps the expert used some superb technique like a dragon hibernating to hide his own life force and aura. He destroyed the 10,000 soul banner for us and removed the threat. There were differing opinions, and no conclusion could be reached. If it had been an undead creature with low intelligence that was controlled by Bai Xiaowen, such as the Death Knight, these righteous experts would have long seen through its true form. Before and after Kits broke the 10,000 soul banner, that series of mutterings clearly showed that he was a person with his own will and not a puppet controlled by someone. Therefore, a group of cultivator experts, including Qiu Zhenli, mistakenly believed that Kits was an expert in disguise. The most important reason for this expert's image was that Kits seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll, shuttling through the dangerous demonic array chaotic area to reach the center of the demonic array. This was something that all the righteous experts present, including the suzerain-level experts, found difficult to do. Of course, they wouldn't believe that a corpse puppet could do it. Many people began to search for Kits, but there was no trace of him. The reason was very simple. When the righteous experts captured the remaining 10 elders of the Black Sky cult, the situation was chaotic, and Bai Xiaowen took the opportunity to recall Kits. It had to be said here that in the world of evolvers, the rules had become real. There was no difference between combat and non-combat state. Bai Xiaowen could recall his summoned creatures regardless of whether he was in battle or not. However, he had to prepare for it for a short period of time. After testing, it was about 1 to 10 seconds. The further the summoned creature was from Bai Xiaowen, the longer it would take to prepare. Bai Xiaowen could also recall multiple summoned creatures at the same time. However, the summoned creature would not be able to move while it was being recalled. Due to the time limit, it was very difficult to recall a summoned creature to dodge a skill during a battle. Unless it was a skill that took a long time to charge up, Bai Xiaowen would not be able to recall it in time. If Bai Xiaowen recalled his summoned creature during battle, he could summon it again. Of course, the health and spiritual energy lost by the summoned creatures would not be recovered for no reason. Since they couldn't find Keats, the people from Shangqing School collected the 11 wraith streamers on the field. Someone said, these wraith streamers were refined from the resentment of living people. They are harmful to the harmony of heaven and earth. They should all be destroyed. However, someone immediately retorted, since they have already been refined, there is no need to destroy them. Using these sinister magical tools to deal with the demons of the Black Sky Cult, fighting poison with poison can achieve miraculous results. Most of the people who proposed to destroy them were people from other sections. And the one who retorted was actually an elder from Shangqing School. With this elder from Shangqing School taking the lead, some small sects and powers close to Shangqing School all spoke out, believing that the wraith streamers should not be destroyed. Shangqing School's great elder Chenjia held a wraith streamer with a strange expression. He waved his hand and ordered his disciples to bring the remaining wraith streamers over. He examined them one by one. After a while, Chenjia raised his voice and said, there is no need to argue. The resentful spirits stored in these wraith streamers have all been removed. They have already been destroyed. Ah! There was such a thing? The various righteous sects were inexplicably shocked. Chenjia was too lazy to argue. He waved his hand and ordered his disciples to distribute the 11 wraith streamers. He said, give them to the various sects and ask them to take a look. Everyone passed it around. Even Bai Xiaowen took it. After taking it in his hand, he swept it with his eye of evolution and got a prompt, wraith streamer, damaged gray quality, hardness D-, blunt C-, spiritual power increased by 1 level. Description: this item has lost its most important reserve of resentful spirits. It has been completely damaged and cannot be repaired. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly and passed it on for others to see. This time, everyone was speechless. Chenjia raised his voice and said, I don't know which expert helped our Shangqing School get through this calamity and destroyed the conspiracy of the Black Sky Cult. Please show yourself. Bai Xiaowen was silent. Chenjia raised his voice and said it twice more, but did not get a response. He shook his head and sighed. The expert is truly elusive, hiding his achievements and fame deeply. It's admirable. Bai Xiaowen said in his heart. If not for the fact that he had little capital and was unwilling to take the risk, he would definitely stand out and ask for enough benefits for this favor from the Shangqing School. If Bai Xiaowen wanted to stand out, why would he need to go through the trouble of controlling kits to travel through the demonic array and destroy the 10,000 soul streamer? But this time, Bai Xiaowen was not without gain. It was the bead of unknown material that kits obtained after destroying the 10,000 soul streamer. He got the answer with a sweep of his eye of evolution. 1,000 soul jade, level 4 epic treasure, purple, source of spiritual power, in attribute. What quality was epic? Simply put, it was a grade higher than dark gold. Bai Xiaowen already knew that dark gold corresponded to Lord, and purple corresponded to King. Purple equipment was called epic equipment, and purple treasures were naturally epic treasures. This was the first time Bai Xiaowen had obtained an epic item. Most importantly, this was a source of spiritual power. The White Phoenix Territory's 5 elements great array had a source of spiritual power as the eye of the array. The only thing that Bai Xiaowen was worried about was that this 1,000 soul jade's grade was too high. What if the other 5 elements treasures he found could not keep up? Bai Xiaowen checked the rules of the spiritual realm in passing and was reassured by the reply. It turned out that to set up the 5 elements grade array, he only needed to find 5 elements treasures of the same grade. As for the source of spiritual power, the grade requirement was that it could not be lower than the 5 elements treasures. It did not matter if it was 1 or 2 grades higher. As the source of spiritual power, it was also where the eye of the array was located. It was equivalent to the CPU of a computer or the engine of a car. It did not matter if the supporting parts could not keep up. When the source of spiritual power was operating, it just had to lower its energy level by 1 grade. For example, if it operated at 30% power, it could work with a lower grade 5 elements treasure to form the 5 elements grade array. This was even more convenient. In the future, when he wanted to upgrade the territory's protective array, he did not need to change the source of spiritual power. He could just switch to the 5 elements treasures. After obtaining such a great benefit, Bai Xiaowen naturally did not want to reveal his identity in public, lest someone covet his wealth. Bai Xiaowen had always maintained a reserved attitude towards the various righteous sections. Evil path demons used living people as sacrificial offerings to refine demonic artifacts. Of course, they deserved to be hacked to pieces. However, not all righteous people were sincere and righteous. At present, the only person who knew about Bai Xiaowen's plan was Qinrong. When Bai Xiaowen had originally formulated the plan, he did not expect it to go so smoothly. The part of the original plan that required Qinrong's cooperation was not put to use. If I had known this would happen, I would not have prepared Qinrong as a backup plan. I would also have lost Qinrong as an insider. However, it is not entirely a bad thing that Qinrong knows. At least I have completed the mission of finding the real culprit. Moreover, the degree of completion is definitely not low. Chapter 1484. Although the martial arts conference had gone through a huge storm, it was still a daunting experience. Qinrong received the impartation of the Shangqing treasure tome and became a candidate for the next schoolmaster. However, if there was a change in the position of the next schoolmaster and she did not have the qualifications to inherit it, Qinrong would have to abolish her cultivation of the Shangqing treasure tome when the next schoolmaster was replaced. Of course, the possibility of this was very small. Unless Qinrong did something that angered the heavens and people, she would definitely become the next schoolmaster. Bai Xiaowen did not participate in the subsequent ceremony of Qinrong receiving the tome. Instead, he strolled back to his room. I'll stay and talk to Qinrong one last time. Then, I'll be able to complete the mission and earn a sum of spirit crystals. I wonder what kind of mission reward Qinrong will give me. 500 spirit crystals was the reward for the side mission according to the rules of the spiritual realm. It had nothing to do with Qinrong's personal reward. Under the rules of reality, the favorability, affection, and faction reputation of the people in the spiritual realm were all hidden. They would not be displayed at all. Therefore, there was no main mission of join a faction and reach XX reputation. This was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for evolvers who liked to woo girls. They could not judge how far they had progressed through the affection level. However, Bai Xiaowen did not care. He was usually the target of being wooed. The fun of a handsome man was that simple and boring. Of course, Bai Xiaowen was still careful and prepared for both sides. That night, Qinrong came to look for Bai Xiaowen. However, she did not come alone. Behind her was a middle-aged man with a pale face and no beard who looked like a eunuch. The elder of Shangqing School, Tangren. Bai Xiaowen's face revealed a hint of surprise. Qinrong smiled and said, "Brother Liu, now that the storm has passed, I naturally have to report the situation to the elders in the school. Congratulations. Several elders have heard of your achievements and are very grateful. They want you to stay in Shangqing School as a guest." Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes slightly and cupped his hands. "Elder Tang, Miss Chen, I still have matters to attend to." Qinrong's face revealed a look of regret. "I see. Brother Liu not only solved the serial murder case this time, but also helped our Shangqing School to destroy the conspiracy of the Black Sky Cult. I really don't know how to thank you." "Oh right, I'll give you a storage bracelet with a larger capacity." As he spoke, Chenrong took out an emerald bracelet and handed it to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen had shown his storage ability in front of Chenrong before. It was actually 10 cubic meters of personal storage space. This storage space was still too small for evolvers. Bai Xiaowen didn't directly mention that his storage space was too small, so he was a little surprised that Chenrong took the initiative to give him a storage bracelet. If he had observed Bai Xiaowen's expression and learned of Bai Xiaowen's inner needs, then Chenrong's strategy was really terrifying. Bai Xiaowen took the storage bracelet and said with a smile, "Thank you, Miss Chen." The Eye of Evolution scanned the storage bracelet and obtained the basic information. Storage bracelet, gold quality, storage device, volume 100 cubic meters. The length, width, and height of the storage space can be adjusted, but the volume will not change. The volume of a gold quality storage device was 10 times larger than that of an evolver's storage space. For a powerful evolver, no treasure was more important than a storage device with a large capacity. The carving of the storage bracelet itself was also very exquisite. There was a lifelike relief of a dragon and a phoenix on it. Hey, there seems to be something inside. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. When he scanned the storage bracelet with his spiritual sense, he saw that it wasn't empty. However, Bai Xiaowen looked thoughtfully at Tangren standing next to him and didn't say anything. Just as Chenrong gave the reward, the Spirit Realm's rules also notified him that his mission was completed. The completion rate was 104%, and he was rewarded with 700 spirit crystals. The completion rate can exceed 100%? Bai Xiaowen discovered a new continent. The super brain ran for 0.1 seconds, and Bai Xiaowen figured out why there was a completion rate of 104%. The mission's requirement was only to investigate the serial murder case and find the real murderer. In other words, the Spirit Realm's rules determined that the Black Sky cult hiding in the Shangqing school was too powerful, so powerful that the person who received the mission, Bai Xiaowen, couldn't defeat them. Therefore, he was only given an investigation mission and not an annihilation mission. As for Bai Xiaowen, not only did he find the real murderer, but he also destroyed the Black Sky cult's plan and greatly changed the direction of the plot between the good and evil factions in Xiaowei's plane. Destroying the 10,000 soul banner was of utmost importance. Therefore, the Spirit Realm's rules determined that Bai Xiaowen had exceeded the requirements of the mission, mainly because he did well in the additional questions. Of course, Bai Xiaowen probably didn't get all the points for the basic questions. If he wanted all the basic points, he should find the real murderer of Zhou Wu and kill him, or capture him alive. Bai Xiaowen had already guessed which person from the Black Sky cult killed Zhou Wu. It was most likely the Black Sky cult's right enforcer, Sheiji. From the aura of her spiritual power, Sheiji's aura belonged to the extremely feminine type, and once she got close, it would be impossible to guard against her. Zhou Wu had already taken precautions, but his protective elemental energy was as if it didn't exist, and was easily penetrated. It was definitely Sheiji's method. The left enforcer, the thousand-armed butcher, Qiu Zhenli's methods were overbearing, and to be honest, he wasn't suitable for this kind of assassination job. For example, if this hero's mission was a test, killing the real murderer Sheiji alone should be able to get the first part of the basic test a full 100 points, exposing and destroying the Black Sky cult's plot at the back could be an additional 10 points. Bai Xiaowen's basic test was about 95%, which was the perfect baseline, but he basically got all the additional points, or most of them, which was why he had a final score of 104%. Strictly speaking, Bai Xiaowen had used a trick. Relying on the Eye of Evolution and his true inner force priority of 8 points, he had successfully controlled Lu Sanding, Lu Buchan. Not only had he learned of most of the Black Sky cult's plans, he had also obtained a chess piece that he could use to infiltrate the enemy. If it were other evolvers, the most they could do was kill or capture Lu Sanding, but this would alert the Black Sky cult. Want to be like Bai Xiaowen, destroy the soul refining formation and turn the tide? It was basically impossible. Didn't you see that so many Lord-class Shangqing school elders present were suppressed by the soul refining formation to the point that their strength was greatly reduced? Therefore, the 104% completion rate this time was almost impossible to replicate. The final reward was 700 spirit crystals, as well as a large storage bracelet of Chenrong's personal reward. It was quite a harvest. Tangren looked at the storage bracelet Chenrong gave to Bai Xiaowen, squinted slightly, and said, "Young hero Lu, the person who broke into the center of the demonic formation and broke the 10,000 soul banner, was it you in disguise?" Bai Xiaowen's mind turned, and he shook his head. "No, it was a puppet I controlled." Tangren nodded slightly. Young hero Lu's manipulation methods are quite impressive. That puppet should have been taken away by young hero Lu as well? That's right. Bai Xiaowen said happily. Tangren continued, after the 10,000 soul banner was destroyed, an evil item appeared, which was the condensation of the 10,000 soul banner's essence. It must have fallen into young hero Lu's hands. Hearing the two words evil item, Bai Xiaowen knew that things were not good. What would come, and that trace of worry from before had indeed become a reality. Bai Xiaowen's face did not have any hesitation, and he directly nodded, saying happily, "Yes." Tang Ren's eyes flashed, and he said, "Young hero Lu, that evil item is the condensation of thousands of resentful souls, extremely evil. If it were to spread to the outside world, it would definitely cause a huge disaster." Chapter 1485. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere in the quiet room became slightly tense. Chenrong was somewhat dissatisfied. He glanced at Tangren and said, "Elder, that thing is also a rare treasure, but its attribute is more towards yin and cold. Don't you believe in Lu Wang's character? He definitely won't use it for evil." Tangren shook his head and said coldly, "His strength is low, it's impossible for him to protect the treasure. The best plan is to hand it over and let our Shangqing school purify it." After a pause, Tangren said, "Xiao Rong, don't mention that you're not the school head yet. Even if you are, I'm still your martial uncle. It's not up to you to lecture me about my decisions." Chenrong took a breath and remained silent. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Well, Elder Tang's worries are reasonable. It's not appropriate for this kind of evil treasure to stay in my hands. If it's leaked out, the Black Sky Cult will definitely try to seize it. It's also a big threat to my personal safety. It's better to hand it over to the Shangqing school." After a pause, Bai Xiaowen smiled and said to Tangren, "Elder Tang, I'll hand it over to the Shangqing school. You have to keep it a secret. Don't let the Black Sky Cult seek revenge on me." Bai Xiaowen's unexpected understanding made Chenrong's expression complicated. Tangren showed an appreciative smile. "Well said, young Master Lu is really a wise man who understands the situation. Leaving that thing in the Shangqing school is the safest choice. Rest assured, young Master Lu, our Shangqing school will definitely keep it a secret. We definitely won't let the Black Sky Cult's devils know that you broke the soul refining array and the 10,000 soul banner." While speaking, Tangren stretched out his hand. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, "Elder Tang, this thing can be handed over to the Shangqing school, but not to you." "Why?" Tangren looked unhappy. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "I want to meet the head of your school. In my eyes, only he can represent Shangqing school." Tangren understood that Bai Xiaowen did not believe in his promise. The sect leader's promise naturally carried more weight. He might even be able to obtain some benefits from the sect master by offering the treasures. Tangren thought for a while and thought that he understood Bai Xiaowen's intention. However, Tangren said, "Unfortunately, young Master Lu, you won't be able to see the sect leader." Bai Xiaowen frowned. Chenrong hurriedly explained, "Brother Lu, my master is in seclusion and has reached a critical point in his cultivation. He hasn't even appeared in this time's prime clear ceremony. I'm afraid it's impossible for him to meet you personally." After a pause, Chenrong continued, "Brother Liu, you can meet my grandfather, the first elder of Shangqing school. When the sect leader is in seclusion, he's in charge of the Shangqing school's affairs. His words can also represent the will of the entire Shangqing school." Bai Xiaowen smiled and nodded, "Okay, then I'll go see First Elder Chen and give the item to him in person." Tangren was a bit unhappy, but he had nothing to say. After all, he didn't have much authority in Shanqing school. He flicked his sleeve and walked out of the quiet room first. Chenrong said to Bai Xiaowen apologetically, "Brother Liu, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told the sex upper echelons about this and forced you to hand over the treasure." Bai Xiaowen looked at Chenrong's eyes. He could tell that this Taoist female cultivator's tone was sincere, but at this moment, he couldn't gamble. He smiled and nodded, comforting her, "No matter, this item can be considered the source of disaster. If I take it, I'll definitely be targeted by the Black Sky sect. Why don't I give it to your sect?" Chenrong kept staring at Bai Xiaowen. Intuitively, she felt that Bai Xiaowen wasn't telling the truth. Although Bai Xiaowen's acting skills were very good, and even Elder Tang had been deceived by him, Chenrong was very concerned about Bai Xiaowen's every move, frown, and smile, so she could find some clues in the details. What's more, Chenrong herself could be considered an intelligent woman with excellent qualifications. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to get the position of head of Shanqing school. However, Chenrong didn't say anything. She just sighed softly, walked over to open the door of the quiet room, and then turned her head and said, "Brother Liu, please come with me." Along the way, Bai Xiaowen and Chenrong walked in front, and Tangren followed behind. The more Tangren looked at Bai Xiaowen, the more suspicious he became. He found that Bai Xiaowen's walking posture was a little too mechanical. Every step he took seemed to have been measured with a ruler, not an inch more or an inch less. It wouldn't be strange if it was only a short distance, but it was still the same after walking a long distance and almost reaching the Three Pure Ones Hall. Tangren couldn't help but call out to Bai Xiaowen, "Young Master Liu, please wait a moment." Bai Xiaowen turned his head and said with a smile, "What's the matter, Elder Tang?" Tang Ren's confidence wavered a little when he saw Liu Liang's smile. However, he was a suspicious and cautious person, so he immediately rushed forward and reached out to grab Bai Xiaowen's wrist, saying, "Young Master Liu, you don't look well. Let me take your pulse." After grabbing Bai Xiaowen's wrist, Tang Ren injected a wisp of primordial qi into it. There was a soft popping sound. Bai Xiaowen burst like a soap bubble, leaving behind a straw puppet doll. The illusion turned into bits of primordial qi and dissipated. "It's fake?" Chenrong exclaimed. Tang Ren's face suddenly darkened. This kid's primordial qi is so pure. He can even control the puppet doll from a distance and speak fluently. It's no wonder he could fool you and me. Tang Ren's figure was like an eagle as he rushed to the quiet room where they had set off. However, the quiet room was already empty. There was no trace of Liu Liang. "It seems that young Master Liu has left," Chenrong said softly. "Uncle Tang, you're not sincere, so young Master Liu doesn't trust our Shanqing school." Tangren shook his head and said, "Xiao Rong, you don't know. Most of the elders agreed to take back the evil treasure. You're not an elder yet, so you don't know." Chenrong said, "Since young Master Liu has left, let's end this matter here." Tangren shook his head and sneered, "This kid can't run away. I'll send out a warning signal to close the mountain guarding formation and block the exit. Close the door and catch the mouse, let's see where he can run to." Tangren shook his finger and a silver talisman appeared at his fingertips. He then quickly threw it into the air. The silver talisman exploded in the air and let out a soul-shaking shrill whistle. Shanqing School, which had already suffered a calamity, quickly took action. Various formations and restrictions were activated, and light flashed alternately. If a practitioner looked from the outside, he would see that the entire inner gate of Shanqing School was wrapped in the light of a protective shield, like a huge eggshell. Chenrong couldn't help but say, "Uncle Tang, Shanqing School owes young Master Liu after all. Why do you have to make such a big fuss?" Tangren shook his head and didn't explain. He directly flew toward the Three Pure Ones Hall. Chapter 1486. F***CKU. Seeing that the mountain protecting Great Formation was activated and the entire Shanqing sect's inner sect was enveloped in it, Bai Xiaowen couldn't help but complain. Was there a need to mobilize so many people? However, this also proved the rarity of Bai Xiaowen's thousand-soul jade. Even the Shanqing school was willing to disregard their previous kindness and openly snatch it. As expected, an epic item was not so easy to obtain. Under the true rules of the evolutionary plane, Bai Xiaowen could take the thousand-soul jade directly without having to go through the loot process. However, this also meant that he would be coveted by powerful spiritual realm factions. When Elder Tangren mentioned the thousand-soul jade, Bai Xiaowen had already sensed that something was wrong. At that time, Bai Xiaowen had another choice, which was to flatly deny that the thousand-soul jade was in his hands. This was not a smart move because the other party already knew that Kitz, who had destroyed the 10,000-soul banner, was a puppet controlled by Bai Xiaowen. Moreover, when the 10,000-soul banner was destroyed, Kitz had scooped up the thousand-soul jade. Many people of the righteous path had clearly seen this. In other words, flatly denying it would not convince Tangren and the other Shanqing school elders. In that case, Tangren would probably fall out with them in order to obtain the thousand-soul jade. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen chose to readily admit it and follow Tangren's words. He expressed that he was willing to hand over the thousand-soul jade and even expressed that he wanted to use it to exchange for some benefits. This was all to numb Tangren and make him let down his guard. As expected, Tangren did not immediately take any forceful measures against Bai Xiaowen. He even walked out of the quiet room ahead of time. When Qinrong turned to open the door of the quiet room, Bai Xiaowen took the opportunity to do two things. First, he used the illusion puppet technique and used his true inner force to create a straw clone of Bai Xiaowen. Second, he put on a fish-patterned robe and hid his true body. At that time, the one who had followed Qinrong out was Bai Xiaowen's puppet illusion. Of course, there was a certain risk in doing this. If Tangren checked Bai Xiaowen strictly, it was very likely that he would be exposed. However, Tangren did not do so. Bai Xiaowen's previous cooperation had made him let down his guard. After Tangren and Qinrong left, Bai Xiaowen immediately ran out of the quiet room and ran toward the outer gate of Shanqing school. However, Tangren was very suspicious. Although he didn't find the problem at first, it didn't take long for him to see that something was wrong. His reaction was also very decisive. After confirming that Bai Xiaowen was trying to escape, he immediately activated the mountain guarding formation and trapped Bai Xiaowen in the inner sect. The illusion doppelganger Dao technique that Bai Xiaowen had learned was a Tier 2 Dao technique. It was not that difficult. However, Bai Xiaowen had learned the wood incarnation demonic technique from the tree demon. He combined it with the illusion doppelganger Dao technique to create a wood incarnation, straw doppelganger, which was much more realistic. When he first encountered the tree demon's wood incarnation, even the passive scanning of the Eye of Evolution could not see through its authenticity. Coupled with Bai Xiaowen's true inner force, it was even more powerful. This was the main reason why Bai Xiaowen could deceive the Lord-level Master Tangren, the suppression of priority. Another important reason was that Bai Xiaowen's ability as a spiritual teacher allowed him to precisely control summoned creatures. The straw doppelganger could also be considered as Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures. However, Bai Xiaowen was only at the beginning stage of learning the wood incarnation demonic technique and did not have any offensive abilities for the time being. Bai Xiaowen controlled the straw doppelganger to follow Qinrong's every step. At the same time, he also talked to Qinrong and Tangren, and his demeanor was just like a real person. This made Tangren unable to detect the problem. Later, Bai Xiaowen was too far away from the straw doppelganger and could not control the straw doppelganger's walking posture and the distance of each step. Only then did Tangren see through the trick. Qinrong, oh Qinrong, I originally wanted to leave quietly and not take a single cloud with me. Your Shanqing school is forcing me, so don't blame me. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself. The Shanqing school activated the mountain protecting formation. It seemed like they were locking him in the inner sect, but wasn't this the same as locking a mouse in a rice jar? Especially since Qinrong had given him the fish-patterned clothes and the map of the inner sect. Bai Xiaowen could completely avoid the search of the elders of the Shanqing school and ransack the important places of the inner sect. For example, the treasury of the Shanqing school. Generally speaking, the location of the treasury was very secretive, but Bai Xiaowen had the map. These 2 days, he had secretly observed the layout of various buildings in the inner sect of the Shanqing school. He already knew the location of the treasury like the back of his hand. Another key point was that the mountain protecting formation of the Shanqing school was mainly used to defend against external enemies. The few formation towers that maintained the mountain protecting formation were all in the inner sect. To break the mountain protecting formation from the outer sect, unless a genuine king-level master made a move, no one would be able to do it. However, in the inner sect, as long as the formation towers were destroyed, the formation would naturally be broken. Bai Xiaowen already had a plan in mind. He only needed to wait until nightfall to take action. 2 blooming flowers, 1 water chapter, crossed out, 1 branch on the surface. 30 miles away from the mountain gate of the Shanqing school, there was a secret underground cave. It was the secret lair of the Black Sky cult and also a base for attacking the Shanqing school. With the sound of the wind, 2 figures, 1 in front and 1 behind, fled into the cave. They were the 2 guardians of the Black Sky cult, the left guardian Qiu Zhenli and the right guardian Sheiji. Where are the cult members left behind? Why didn't they come out to greet me? Qiu Zhenli's temper was very bad as he shouted angrily. Sheiji was careful and advised, keep your movements quiet. This place is very close to the Shanqing school. The Shanqing school will definitely send out elites to search. Don't attract pursuers. Qiu Zhenli snorted and landed at the entrance of the cave. Suddenly, Qiu Zhenli's expression changed slightly. No, there's the smell of blood. He quickly rushed into the cave. In the cave, the dozen or so Black Sky cult elite disciples left behind to guard the cave were all dead. The spirit crystals, spirit materials, and other resources that were piled up in the cave were all looted. Who did it? Qiu Zhenli was furious, but he suppressed it and asked coldly. You're asking me, but who should I ask? Sheiji curled her lips. Anyway, it can't be the Shanqing school. If they knew about this hiding place, they would have ambushed us long ago. Qiu Zhenli cracked his knuckles. I suspect that the person who looted this cave and the person who ruined our plan are from the same faction. The traitor Lu Buchan should have sided with this faction and not the Shanqing school. How do you know? Sheiji asked. Qiu Zhenli analyzed, if the Shanqing sect knows about our overall plan, then just as you said, they will prepare a killing move in advance at this hiding place. Moreover, they will also make sufficient preparations for the battle in the sword-testing valley. But from what I saw today, almost all of the Shanqing school's elder-level powerhouses were wiped out by the sword-testing valley battle in one fell swoop. Their reaction was also very panicked. Sheiji nodded. That's right, this is also what I'm confused about. But if Lu Buchan wanted to side with the enemy, why didn't he side with the Shanqing school? Is there any faction more powerful than the Shanqing school? Qiu Zhenli said, of course there is. It's just that you don't have the right to know. Sheiji retorted, you think you have the right to know? Isn't it just a hidden sect? I've heard a thing or two about it. Do you mean that there are masters from the hidden sects who did this? Qiu Zhenli frowned and said, if it's a hidden sect, why would they loot this cave? It's also very puzzling. To the masters from the hidden sects, would the spirit crystals and spirit materials hidden in this cave be worth their attention? Sheiji shook her head and said, God knows. Maybe the masters from the hidden sects have some weird fetishes and insist on experiencing the feeling of killing and robbing. Qiu Zhenli snorted. Since people know about this place, it's no longer safe. You and I will return to the headquarters to treat our injuries immediately and make further plans. Chapter 1487. Mr. Lu, this is all a misunderstanding. Mr. Lu, please show yourself. The Shanqing school's inner gate was in a mess. The Shanqing school's disciples scattered everywhere, shouting loudly. But no one responded. On the top of a pavilion in the central district, a tall and thin old man wearing a red robe with silver edges stood with his hands behind his back, his face as calm as water. Beside the tall and thin old man, there was a middle-aged man with a white face and no beard. It was Elder Tangren. After a long while, the Shanqing school's disciples flew back from all over the place. Elder Pan, Elder Tang, we've searched everywhere, but we didn't find any trace of Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu must have heard our shouts, but he's hiding and unwilling to show himself. Elder, what should we do next? Elder Pan in the red robe with silver edges suddenly took a deep breath and said loudly, Mr. Lu, I'm Elder Pan Dekhang of the Shanqing school. I guarantee with my life that the Shanqing school has no hostility towards Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu, please show yourself and clear up the misunderstanding. Clear up the misunderstanding, meeting. The echoes kept echoing in the Shanqing school's inner gate. The Shanqing school's disciples held their breaths and waited. However, the person they were looking forward to never showed up. Uncle Pan, Mr. Lu must have a deep prejudice against our Shanqing school after the protective mountain array is activated. He won't come out. Chenrong said softly. Go and look for him again. After Elder Pan Dekhang dismissed the disciples around him, he sighed and glared at Tangren, Junior Brother Tang, it's all your fault. Tangren forced a smile and said, Senior Brother, I'm also thinking for Mr. Lu. He has evil treasures, which will definitely cause the Black Sky Cult to rob him. It's really better to give it to our Shanqing school. When the elders discussed this matter, you also agreed to it. Pan Dekhang said angrily, the Elders Guild's opinion is that we should treat Mr. Lu politely and exchange it with other treasures. There's no reason to snatch something from someone who isn't willing to give it to you. You must know that young Master Lu destroyed the Black Sky Cult scheme in the Sword Trial Valley and saved the reputation of our Shanqing school. Tangren complained, Senior Brother, I didn't snatch it by force. That Lu brat kept promising, but I didn't expect him to be so cautious and want to slip away. Pan Dekhang said, if he wants to leave, just let him go. Why did you send out a warning signal? Once the protective mountain formation is activated, young Master Lu will definitely suspect that we are blocking him in the inner sect to rob him of his treasures or even kill him to silence him. Chenrong could not help but say, Marshal Uncle Pan, why don't we close the mountain guarding formation and let young Master Lu leave quietly? No! No! Pan Dekhang and Tangren shouted at the same time. Pan Dekhang glared at Tangren again and said with a sigh, Xiaorong, now that the misunderstanding has been formed, we can't back down. Tangren said, that Lu brat must hate us to the core. What if he goes out and casually talks nonsense, slandering the reputation of our Shanqing school? Pan Dekhang said, the only way is to find young Master Lu, treat him generously, and let him go after clearing up the misunderstanding. Chenrong frowned and asked tentatively, is this really what Marshal Uncle Pan is thinking? Pan Dekhang was displeased, how can it be fake? Chenrong continued, what should we do if we can't find any traces of young Master Lu? Pan Dekhang said, Senior Brother Chen is now leading most of the elders to patrol the area around the Shanqing school, looking for the remnants of the Black Sky Cult. They will definitely be back in less than 10 days. When the time comes, all the elders will search together. The inner sect is only so big, we will definitely be able to find young Master Lu. Tangren said thoughtfully, Xiaorong, have you guessed Lu Wang's location? Chenrong shook his head repeatedly, no. Seeing the Shanqing school disciples running around and shouting his name, Bai Xiaowen, who was hiding in the dark, frowned slightly. Could it be that I'm wrong? Are the bad guys in Shanqing school the minority? Is there really a misunderstanding? Even if there was such a possibility, and it was very likely, Bai Xiaowen didn't dare to show up rashly. It was stupid to bet his own safety on the other party's conscience. At least, the mountain guarding formation was still open, and the other party didn't intend to close it. From this point alone, they lacked sincerity to clear up the misunderstanding. Bai Xiaowen could only act according to the original plan. At night, the Shanqing school disciples, who had been shouting for the whole evening, were finally allowed to rest. They all went to sleep with a stomach full of resentment. Bai Xiaowen finally had some peace. He put on a fish-patterned coat and quietly sneaked into the entrance of one of the Shanqing school's treasure houses. According to the route map, this treasure house was classified as a dangerous area. There were 3 formation restrictions at the entrance alone. Once touched, even if one didn't die, they would lose a layer of skin. Bai Xiaowen covered his right eye and injected elemental energy into his left eye, activating the Eye of Evolution's active observation mode. Elemental energy threads crisscrossed in Bai Xiaowen's field of vision. Every elemental energy thread was like a spider's web, connecting to the formation restrictions like a sensor. Bai Xiaowen followed the first elemental energy thread and quickly found the place where the first restriction formation talisman was buried. The Eye of Evolution actively observed the formation talisman. Suddenly, the small formation talisman rapidly enlarged in Bai Xiaowen's eyes. The various runes that formed the formation talisman, as well as the elemental energy routes that formed the runes, were clearly displayed. Bai Xiaowen already had a certain level of knowledge about spell talismans and could understand the key points of the elemental energy routes of the formation talisman. He gently stretched out a finger and spat out a thread of elemental energy from the tip of his finger. It quietly landed on the key points of the elemental energy routes and cut them off. This scene was as precise and accurate as a bomb disposal expert cutting off the fuse of a bomb. To achieve this step, the powerful observation ability of the Eye of Evolution and the superiority of Bai Xiaowen's elemental energy were indispensable. After destroying the first restriction formation talisman, Bai Xiaowen continued to move forward and destroyed the second one in the same way. Then came the third one. He followed the formula to get the herbs, but took a little more time. The restriction on the door of the treasure house didn't pose a problem for Bai Xiaowen. He did the same thing and disabled the restriction on the door. Creak creak. A soft sound could be heard as the door of the treasure house opened. Bai Xiaowen buried a straw doll about 200 to 300 meters away from the treasure house. Then, he sneaked into the treasure house. This was an underground treasure house. The straight passageway extended into the darkness, and there were stone doors on both sides of the passageway. Bai Xiaowen looked carefully and saw that there were restriction formation talismans on the stone doors as well. Shangqing School is indeed a professional distributor of talismans. Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself. After some effort, he broke open the first stone door on the left. When the stone door opened, a stone room about 3 square meters appeared in front of him. Above the stone table, for restriction light balls of different colors were suspended. Every restriction light ball was translucent, and one could vaguely see the treasures stored inside. Chapter 1488. Time is money, my friend. Bai Xiaowen reminded himself. According to his understanding over the past few days, Shangqing School had a night patrol team set up by its disciples. The serial murders that had happened some time ago had made the atmosphere in the sect even more tense. Although the murders had been solved, he, an outsider, had infiltrated the inner sanctum. This would inevitably attract the attention of the Shangqing School. The security at night would only be strengthened, not weakened. There was a treasure in every restriction glowing sphere. Before the Shangqing School disciples discovered that the restrictions in the treasury were no longer working, the number of treasures he could obtain would depend on his speed. Of course, because of the limited time, Bai Xiaowen had to choose wisely. Using the Eye of Evolution, he scanned the 4 restriction glowing spheres and gave the simple names of the treasures stored in them. Because of the restriction elemental energy, he could not see the specific grades and attributes of the treasures. Silver quartz, fire copper essence, phoenix perch jade branch, geocentric water jade. I can't tell which item is good just from the names. However, what I'm looking for now is a treasure to set up a 5-element formation, so I'll choose these 2. Bai Xiaowen chose the silver quartz and geocentric water jade. Currently, he already had a wood attribute 5-element treasure, which he had obtained from killing the tree demon. Therefore, he did not need the phoenix perch jade branch. As for the silver quartz and geocentric water jade, they both seemed to be related to earth attribute and water attribute treasures. In short, he was just trying his luck. Bai Xiaowen used the Eye of Evolution to carefully observe the restriction. The surface of the restriction glowed, and elemental energy surged on the surface of the restriction. Obviously, this was not a talisman, nor was it connected to any alarm or counterattack talismans. It was purely an elemental energy protection. No matter how idle the experts of Shangqing school were, it was impossible for them to use talismans to protect all the treasures. Casually wrapping the treasures with elemental energy and setting up a layer of restriction protection was the normal way to preserve the treasures. For ordinary thieves, it was very troublesome to crack talismans, but it was not so difficult to break the elemental energy protection. They could directly break it with brute force or slowly break it. In any case, these balls of elemental energy protection were all water without a source. Even if the thief's strength was weaker than the Shangqing expert who set up the elemental energy protection, he could still slowly grind it open. It was just that it would take a little more time. But to Bai Xiaowen, he would rather have encountered a talisman protection. He was a technical player. Using brute force to break through the defense required too little skill. For Bai Xiaowen, who was only at level 11, it was not friendly enough. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen had the pure energy of true core force, which allowed him to break through the defenses as quickly as a normal level 13 or 14 leader. If it was a talisman protection, Bai Xiaowen could steal until Shangqing school went bankrupt. F***CK. Bai Xiaowen's left hand, which was filled with true inner force, pinched the restrictive light ball of the silver flow quartz and fixed it in his left palm. His right hand, on the other hand, stretched out an index finger, and with a trace of pure true inner force, he poked at the light ball. For this type of elemental energy protection, the thickness of the elemental energy barrier was uniform everywhere. There was no room for the Eye of Evolution to take advantage of it. Bai Xiaowen's right index finger continuously released true inner force. It was like a drill bit, continuously stabbing and stabbing into the light ball. After a few minutes, the true inner force drill bit finally broke through the elemental energy protection. With a soft pop, as if a soap bubble had been popped, the treasure inside the light ball, the silver flow quartz, fell into Bai Xiaowen's palm. Bai Xiaowen looked at it carefully. Silver flow quartz, level 4 gold material, gold and earth dual attribute treasure. The silver flow quartz was very beautiful. It was only the size of a fist, and its surface was smooth. It was obviously a stone, but it gave people the feeling that it was a liquid object. On its surface, there was a constant flash of silver light. It's only a gold-grade material, and its dual attribute. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and put away the silver flow quartz. He did the same thing. After a few minutes, he broke through the elemental energy protection of the geocentric water jade. The geocentric water jade was a gold-grade material with both earth and water attributes. Bai Xiaowen quickly gave up on this stone room and went to the opposite side, which was the first stone room on the right side of the passageway. The talisman defense on the door of the stone room obviously couldn't stop Bai Xiaowen. With the help of the Eye of Evolution, he easily opened it. Why are they all jade scrolls? Bai Xiaowen saw that there were also 4 elemental energy light balls on the stone table. He could see that there were 4 jade scrolls stored inside. There was no doubt that these jade scrolls were books, the kind that could only be read with inner vision. Under the light balls, there was a corresponding label. Sword talisman, fire talisman, earth talisman. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. He had thought that they were training manuals, but he didn't expect that they were just skill books. In other words, they were jade scrolls that taught evolvers an independent skill. They were similar to the tree bark that had dropped from the tree demon and recorded the wood incarnation demonic technique. Of course, the value of these skill books wasn't low, especially to Bai Xiaowen, who had just stepped into the world of evolvers and lacked skills. However, Bai Xiaowen gave it some thought and directly abandoned it. It seems that the stone room on the left is filled with treasures and materials. The stone room on the right is filled with skill books. Bai Xiaowen focused on the stone room on the left. He spent some energy and opened the second room on the left. Heavenly gold sand? Flaming dragon bone? Out of the 4 treasures, Bai Xiaowen had his eyes on these two items at first glance. Without further ado, he went straight for them. After breaking through the first elemental energy protection, a lump of glittering gold sand fell into Bai Xiaowen's palm. This lump of sand seemed to be attracted to each other and was tightly adhered to each other. Heavenly gold sand, level 4 gold grade material, metal attribute treasure. Haha! I finally got a metal attribute 5 elemental treasure. Keep up the good work. Just as Bai Xiaowen was making a fortune in the Shanqing School's treasury, a small group of Shanqing School disciples passed by the treasury during their patrol. One of the Shanqing disciples revealed a puzzled expression. Eldest apprentice brother, what's wrong? That Shanqing disciple was the eldest apprentice brother, Shangjin. He said doubtfully, strange, why can't I feel any elemental energy waves from the treasury's restriction? Could it be that my senses have deteriorated? The restriction talisman is buried underground. The elemental energy waves are very weak to begin with. We can't even feel it. Shangjin shook his head and said, no, I could feel it in the past. He suddenly leaped up and flew to the treasury. He drew a seal with his finger and shot it towards the treasury. This was the seal to open the treasury's restriction. Among the younger generation of disciples, only Shangjin had been taught this. However, now that there was another person, Chenrong, there was no need to mention it. The seal was like a clay ox entering the sea without a sound. Shangjin's expression changed abruptly as he cried out involuntarily, not good, the treasury's restriction talisman has been broken by someone. The expressions of the Shanqing disciples all changed greatly. Hurry and inform the elders. Chapter 1489. The Shanqing School's treasure house was brightly lit. The two elders, Pan Dekhang and Tangren, hurried to the scene. Shangjin, what's the situation? Pan Dekhang asked after arriving. Shangjin said, I've been guarding the door of the treasure house, waiting for the two martial uncles to arrive. Well done. Pan Dekhang praised Shangjin. Shangjin was mature and prudent, doing things properly. Tangren said, the person who entered the treasure house must be that guy surnamed Lu. He's really daring to break into the Shanqing School's important place. It seems that he's not an upright gentleman. Pan Dekhang frowned and said, we were at fault first. Even if he entered the treasure house and stole a few spiritual objects, let him be. It's not a secret treasure house, so it won't affect the foundation of our Shanqing School. I'm worried that he might have triggered the array restriction. Pan Dekhang went forward to check the restriction on the treasure house's door. After checking, Pan Dekhang was shocked. This young man called Lu Wang is actually so powerful? Tangren and several patrolling disciples, including Chenrong who arrived later, all gathered around. Pan Dekhang pointed to the buried restriction array and said, Lu Wang didn't break the restriction with brute force, but skillfully cut the core lines of the array. No wonder it didn't trigger the array's warning function. Even I may not be able to do such a delicate trick. Tangren muttered, evil intentions. The stronger the ability, the greater the disaster. Pan Dekhang finally couldn't bear it and angrily rebuked Tangren in front of all the disciples. Junior brother Tang, what kind of resentment do you have against Lu Wang? You should know that he destroyed the Black Sky Cult's plot in the Sword Testing Valley and saved our Shanqing School and the experts of various sections. He's a great benefactor to the Shanqing School. Originally, I was planning to barter for that evil treasure from him and thank him properly. But you, on the other hand, directly took it by force and activated the protective formation without permission, leading to a deep misunderstanding. You can't shirk your responsibility for the current situation. Tangren's face turned pale. He lowered his head and said, Senior brother is right. Pan Dekhang snorted and said, if he's not a righteous person, why would he risk his life and do something so heroic in the Sword Trial Valley? Furthermore, combined with the various exquisite methods displayed by this young Master Lu, don't you suspect his origin? Tangren narrowed his eyes. Could he be from that place? Pan Dekhang nodded heavily. It's good that you understand. The cultivators from that place are not people our Shangqing school can afford to offend. When Shenrong heard this, he frowned slightly and hesitated to speak. As the candidate for the next head of the sect, she knew what the two elders were talking about. The so-called place referred to the Danxia sect, a hidden sect. It was a holy place for cultivators to practice. However, very few people knew about the Danxia sect, let alone those who had been there. However, Shenrong felt that Lu Wang did not look like a young talent from a hidden sect. When they were in the ancient scholar town, Bai Xiaowen didn't even know the soul sense method at first. Shenrong didn't speak. She felt that it was a good thing to let the elders of the sect misunderstand that Lu Wang came from a hidden sect. Shangjin said, "Martial Uncle Pan, according to the time, that young master Lu Wang should still be in the treasure house and hasn't left yet." Pan Dekang nodded. "Junior brother Tang, Xiao Rong, and Shangjin, follow me in. When you meet young master Lu Wang, don't fight. Just resolve the misunderstanding." Shenrong and Shangjin agreed at the same time. Tang Ren didn't object. After the four of them entered the treasure house, they saw that the stone rooms on the left and B were all opened. Tang Ren's expression suddenly changed. He said, "The A's secret room is filled with rare materials. It doesn't matter if a few of them are stolen. The B secret room contains the secret of talismans from our Shangqing school. We can't let him take it." Pandachang's expression was also a bit unsightly. If he really took away the talisman true inheritance, that would be a bit too much. The four of them first entered the B1 stone room. Seeing that the four elemental energy protective glowing balls and the jade scrolls inside, they all heaved a sigh of relief. The wrinkles on Pandachang's face smoothed out. "Like I said, young Master Lu Wang has an extraordinary background. Of course he will abide by the rules and know what can and cannot be touched. Moreover, some of our Shangqing school's shallow secret arts may not be of interest to young Master Lu." Tang Ren lowered his head, his eyes darting around. The four of them then went to the A1 stone room on the left and saw that 2 spiritual materials were missing. Then, they went to the A2 stone room on the left and saw that 2 more spiritual materials were missing. Shangjin said with some astonishment, that young Master Lu doesn't seem to have a deep cultivation base. How could he so easily break through so many restrictive stone doors and so many elemental energy protective barriers? Pan Dekang sighed. If he really is a young expert from that place, he naturally has methods that ordinary people can't imagine. Hearing up to here, even Shenrong was somewhat uncertain as to whether or not Bai Xiaowen had a deep background from a hidden sect. The four of them did a round of calculations. A total of 7 spiritual materials were missing from the treasury. As for the precious secret arts, none of them were stolen. Of the spiritual materials that were lost, apart from a portion of Tai gold essence that is somewhat heart-wrenching, the rest are fine. Pan Dekang said. However, let's think of it another way. Originally, we planned to give Lu Wang more than a portion of Tai gold essence as a thank you gift. Let's just say that he took the thank you gift himself. When we find him, we'll just give him the few items that he stole. However, the problem was that the four of them searched everywhere in the treasury but didn't find any trace of Lu Wang. Shenrong couldn't help but say, "My 2 senior uncles, I'm afraid that it'll be very difficult for us to find young Master Lu's traces. Why don't we close the mountain protecting Grand Formation and allow him to leave? From what I see, young Master Lu isn't a talkative person. When he sees us close the formation, he'll naturally realize that it was all a misunderstanding. He won't tarnish our Shangqing's reputation in the outside world." Pan Dekang, this old man, was rather stubborn. He shook his head and said, No. We must find him and then explain things clearly." The four of them once again searched around the treasury. "Looks like he really isn't in the treasury." Pan Dekang shook his head, a bit disappointed. One must know that the invisibility effect of the fish pattern robe was basically non-existent to suzerain-level experts, namely the 2 elders. Searching for so long without finding him meant that Lu Wang had left long ago. Chen-rong once again persuaded to close the formation and promised that Lu Wang wouldn't speak carelessly in the outside world. However, Pan Dekhang still didn't agree. Pan Dekhang stayed in the treasury to repair the restrictions on the stone door and sent Tang Ren and the other two away. He first brought the disciples to continue their night patrol. Without waiting for Tang Ren to move, a disciple suddenly rushed in hurriedly, saying, "Elders, it's bad." "What's wrong now?" That disciple said with a long face, "The formation pagoda in the northwest corner fell, a corner of the mountain protecting Grand Formation has collapsed." Chapter 1490. P.S. At the end of the previous paragraph, the array tower has been changed to malfunction, and a corner of the protective array has been automatically closed. Old Yu was thoughtless. Xiao Bai is skilled, not violent demolition. Shangqing School's inner sanctum, northwest corner array tower. Pan Dekhang and Tang Ren looked at each other in dismay as they watched the array talismans being destroyed by a delicate method. Tang Ren said angrily, "Senior brother, this Lu Wang is too much. The protective array is the foundation of Shangqing School. How much effort do we have to spend to repair it?" Pan Dekhang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I still underestimated him. It turns out that Lu Wang went to the treasury to lure us away. His real purpose must be to close the protective array. Now, Lu Wang should have left the inner sanctum of Shangqing School." Tang Ren asked, "Should we chase after him?" "Chase after what? Can you catch up to him?" Pan Dekhang shook his head. "We can't blame Lu Wang for this. We opened the protective array and blocked him from the inner sanctum. We were in the wrong first. Since he took away a few spiritual materials and closed a corner of the formation and left, we'll treat it as our Shangqing sect returning this favor. No one is allowed to pursue this matter. We'll discuss it again when Senior Brother Chen and the others come back." It was a moonlit night. Bai Xiaowen rode on the Wrathclaw and galloped in the wilderness. He was in a good mood. "It seems that I only snuck into an ordinary treasury and only got some gold-level treasures. There was only one dark gold-level treasure, Tai pure gold. However, this kind of loss shouldn't make Shangqing School anxious. If I snuck into a secret treasury and got many dark gold-level treasures, or even an epic-level purple treasure, Shangqing School will probably chase after me at all costs. Even Chen-rong will be implicated. Until now, they haven't sent anyone to chase after me. They must have suffered this loss." Bai Xiaowen paused for a moment and focused his mind. After 10 seconds of channeling, he recalled the shadow assassin that was placed at the entrance of the Shangqing School to monitor whether there were pursuers. That night, Bai Xiaowen sneaked into the treasure house. Not only could he plunder a batch of treasures, but he could also lure the enemy away from the mountain. When the masters of the Shangqing School came to check the treasure house, he could destroy the group of array glyphs in the array tower, open a corner of the array, and slip away. When Shang Zhen and the others discovered that the treasure vault had been robbed and reported to the elders, Bai Xiaowen had activated the straw dolls that were buried in the periphery. He used a teleportation Dao technique and moved from inside the treasure vault to outside the treasure vault, where the straw dolls were. Shang Zhen and the other disciples were unable to detect the fish pattern robe on his body. By the time Pan Dekhang and Tang Ren arrived at the treasury, Bai Xiaowen had already arrived at the northwest array tower. Although the process of using the Eye of Evolution and the true inner force to destroy the group of array glyphs was very elegant, it was just a basic operation and needless to say. The only thing worth mentioning was that Bai Xiaowen did things with a sense of propriety. The two Shangqing sect's inner sect disciples, elite level, who were guarding the array tower, he used his true elemental force to confine them, similar to sealing their acupoints, to temporarily seal their ability to move. He did not harm their lives, nor did he kill them to rob them. Stealing a few treasures was pardonable, but if he killed someone, the nature of the matter would be different. Later on, when he ran to the outer gate of the Shangqing School, the fish pattern robe lost its effect. Bai Xiaowen also encountered two outer gate disciples who were patrolling. Similarly, he did not harm their lives and only knocked them down. I want to build the 5 elements array in my territory. I have now collected 4 of the 5 elements treasures needed. In the Shangqing School's treasure house, I obtained heavenly gold sand, flame dragon bone, and rose quartz, which correspond to the gold, fire, and earth attributes respectively. They are all gold-level materials. After killing the tree demon, I obtained animated spiritual wood, which is a gold-level wood attribute material. In this way, I only need the water attribute 5 elements treasures to build the array. Water attribute gold-level materials should not be difficult to find. If he really could not find them, he could go to the Evolutionary platform to trade with other evolvers or go to the Blue Star Overlord group chat. Although there was a certain amount of risk in the Blue Star Overlord group, Bai Xiaowen would be able to activate the 5 elements array as long as he obtained the water attribute treasures. The safety of his territory would be guaranteed. Now, there was not much time left for Xiao Ding's 1-month stay in the plain. Bai Xiaowen did not want to spend extra spirit crystals to stay, so he went straight to the ancient road in Sangzhou, in the direction of the ancient pagoda tree boundary suppressing monument. That was the spatial node he had cut into. He needed to go there in order to return to his territory. Shangqing School was still very far away from Sangzhou. It was more than 2,000 kilometers away. From this point, it could be seen that the map of Xiao Ding's plain was different from the map of Song Lizong's era in real history. At least, the map had expanded a lot. In the background of both righteous and evil experts and cultivators, dynasties were just a kind of time coordinate. Presumably, the deterrence of imperial power would also be greatly reduced. Think about it. In the Three Kingdoms plain, a Zhuasi could play with Cao Cao. In the world of evolvers, how many Zhuasi were there in Xiao Ding's plain? Powerful cultivators could rely on their cultivation and Daoist techniques to dominate nobles and officials. Bai Xiaowen could not help but begin to think. His professional ancient book, The Art of War, as a command-type ancient book, was still most useful on the battlefield. Then, in such a world of evolvers, would a command-type ancient book really be useful? At least during this exploration process, the Art of War almost did not play any role. It was completely because of the Eye of Evolution and the high-priority true inner force that he gained so much. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly. Perhaps in the later stages, the power of the Art of War would be reflected. Passing through the various roads of Jiangnan, then heading north. Along the way, Bai Xiaowen unexpectedly discovered a few Black Sky Cult disciples secretly investigating the main roads of various towns. Who is the Black Sky Cult looking for? They can't be looking for me, right? When the sword-testing valley made his move, Bai Xiaowen had considered the problem of returning, so he did not make a move himself. Instead, he used an extra layer of insurance, controlling kits to destroy the 10,000 soul banner. If the Black Sky Cult wanted to find the enemy who destroyed the 10,000 soul banner, they would definitely find a rough man with dark eyes, a full beard, a double-breasted suit, and bare chest muscles. It was completely inconsistent with his tall and slender figure, sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, extraordinarily handsome, and outstanding temperament. With this thought in mind, Bai Xiaowen did not deliberately avoid the Black Sky Cult's interrogators. He only silently put away the Wrath Claw, carried a bookcase he had stolen, and disguised himself as a poor scholar traveling to study. However, very quickly, Bai Xiaowen discovered that something was wrong. There were people secretly following him from behind. Oh! It's over! How did the Black Sky Cult find me? In Bai Xiaowen's mind, the image of a middle-aged man with a white face and no beard, who looked like a eunuch, quickly appeared. Although it's inconceivable, but this old guy Tangren is very problematic. Bai Xiaowen silently muttered in his heart. Chapter 1491. Bai Xiaowen's judgment that there was something wrong with Tangren wasn't due to personal grudges. He had proof. Firstly, to a certain extent, Tangren was responsible for the inspection of the guests entering the Shangqing ceremony. In the end, the Black Sky Cult sent 13 experts to infiltrate the Shangqing ceremony, which was simply astounding. Secondly, Tangren had always harbored enmity towards Bai Xiaowen. This was very hard to explain. After all, Bai Xiaowen had saved the Shanqing school. If not for Bai Xiaowen, even if the Shanqing school wasn't exterminated, it would at least be greatly damaged. Moreover, there was a risk that the sect's most important scriptures would be leaked. Of course, there was also a final reason, which was that Tangren was ugly. Bai Xiaowen didn't have time to care about Tangren's problem. He was only rejoicing that he had let Cecilia return in advance. In the Shanqing school, Cecilia didn't participate in Bai Xiaowen's investigation mission. Instead, during the Shanqing ceremony, she went to clean out one of the Black Sky Cult's strongholds outside the Shanqing school. After plundering some resources, she quickly returned to the spatial node that Cecilia had cut into, returning in advance. The spatial nodes that the two of them had cut into weren't in the same place, so there was no possibility of meeting up again. In addition, Bai Xiaowen also had a premonition that he was about to stir up a huge commotion, so he let Cecilia leave in advance. Now, Bai Xiaowen only had to think about how to escape. After confirming that the Black Sky Cult spies were always watching him, Bai Xiaowen gave up the disguise of a traveling scholar. Summoning the Wrath Claw, he ran wildly. Along the way, he passed by inns and towns, but didn't enter them. However, after running wildly for 1,000 miles in the day, not only did the spies behind him not disappear, there were even more. When night fell again, Bai Xiaowen still didn't stop to rest, and continued on his way. This kind of reckless haste made the Black Sky Cult disciples behind him cry out in their hearts, but they could only give up on resting and grit their teeth to follow. Bai Xiaowen couldn't do anything about these sticky candy from the Black Sky Cult. He definitely couldn't stop and face them head-on. After all, the Black Sky Cult's strength was not something a level 11 evolver like him could shake. Furthermore, it was unknown what tracking method the Black Sky Cult had, to actually be able to keep up with him. No matter how Bai Xiaowen tried to shake them off, it was to no avail. After shaking them off for a short period of time, they would be closely watched again. The next morning, Bai Xiaowen had just arrived in Sang Province when the Black Sky Cult finally revealed their true intentions, intercepting Bai Xiaowen's return path. Black Sky Cult South Pass City Branch, Branch Master Hu Dahai. Black Sky Cult overturned Zhoushan Branch, Branch Master Yan Bingjun. Black Sky Cult's Red Hillock Mountain Branch, Branch Master Gu Zhangming. Black Sky Sect. There were a total of 6 groups of people, and the 6 people at the front were all branch leaders of the Black Sky Sect. They clasped their hands together and said, "We have been waiting here for Mr. Lu for a long time." While they seemed polite, killing intent was concealed within. Bai Xiaowen jumped down from the back of the Wrath Claw, looking at the 6 branch leaders as well as the 100 or so elite disciples behind them. He narrowed his eyes and said, "You have got the wrong person." The South Pass City Branch Master Hu Dahai laughed. "No need for Mr. Lu to disguise himself. Since we have intercepted you here, we definitely have our methods to confirm your identity. During the Prime Clear ceremony, it was you who spoiled the plans of the sacred church." MMP. Bai Xiaowen cursed in his heart, his resentment towards Elder Tangren growing even deeper. Originally, using Keats to take the lead, destroying the Myriad Soul banner and seizing the epic tier treasure, the 1,000-soul jade, had been a brilliant move. The bad thing was that damned eunuch Tangren. If not for him leaking the news to the Black Sky Cult, how could these people possibly have come looking for him? Seeing Bai Xiaowen remain silent, Branch Master Yan Bingjun opened his mouth. "We have 2 objectives in intercepting Mr. Lu here. Firstly, to request Mr. Lu to hand over the 1,000-soul jade. Secondly, we invite Mr. Lu to make a trip with us to meet the upper echelons of the sacred church, so that our brothers can report back." Bai Xiaowen sighed, saying, "And if I don't agree?" Another branch master, Gu Changming, said coldly, "We have already given you a lot of face. Don't fail to appreciate our kindness, Mr. Lu. These people are wary of me." Bai Xiaowen quickly deduced this point. He could only think of one reason, and that was his accomplishments in the sword-testing valley. Controlling a puppet, Keats, in the eyes of the people of the spirit world, to easily pass through the soul-refining formation and destroy the myriad soul banner, this move was so shocking that these people couldn't see through Bai Xiaowen's actual situation. Bai Xiaowen didn't guess that another important reason why the Black Sky cult was so courteous to him was because of his trumped-up identity as an elite disciple of a hidden sect. Since the other party was afraid, then he would continue to bluff. Bai Xiaowen jumped down from the Wrath Claw and lightly patted the Wrath Claw's stiff fur, using 1 second to summon it back to the Wolf Valley. The people of the Black Sky cult didn't understand, thinking that Bai Xiaowen had given up on resisting. Hu Dehai said, "Does Mr. Liu agree?" Ha 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 ha. Bai Xiaowen looked up to the sky and laughed. "You trash dare to say that I don't know how to appreciate kindness. Even if Qiu Zhenli personally came, I wouldn't give him face. True inner force, deterrence. Right now, there was not even a single ally on the battlefield." Bai Xiaowen did not need to consider the negative effects on his allies at all, so he directly used it. With Bai Xiaowen's base 8 priority, even the leader of the spirit world would be affected by deterrence's subsequent spiritual force field. However, to maintain the effects of the spiritual force field, he had to continuously output true inner force. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand again, and an army of summoned creatures appeared. This was another tactic that Bai Xiaowen had thought of, able to fully utilize true inner force, deterrence. The negative effects of deterrence on allies could be avoided by summoning them later. Although a certain amount of damage would be lost, combined with an airdrop, it could still be effective immediately. Swish, swish, swish. The 2 branch leaders blocking in front of Bai Xiaowen, Yan Bingjun and Gu Zhangming, were each surrounded by a group of summoned creatures. The summoned creatures raised their blades together, and then chopped down. Yan Bingjun and Gu Zhangming seemed to be in a nightmare, their bodies not listening to their commands. Seeing the blade light fall, Yan Bingjun gritted his teeth, and the spirit energy in his body slammed into the meridians in his chest, and then he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Although he was in a difficult situation, he finally regained control of his body. His body suddenly twisted, and he knocked away a summoned creature, escaping from the encirclement. On the other side, Gu Zhangming, who didn't have such decisiveness, could only channel his spirit energy and forcibly resist the enemy's attack. The Mother of Bloodthorns screamed, and a ring-shaped spirit energy sound wave condensed into a beam and hit Gu Zhangming's crotch. Under the active observation of Bai Xiaowen's Eye of Evolution, Gu Zhangming's crotch was the place where his spirit energy was the most concentrated. It could be considered Gu Zhangming's vital point. Gu Zhangming screamed, and his spirit energy protection was instantly broken. He covered his crotch and knelt on the ground. This spiritual energy sound wave had caused him quite a bit of injury. He was shocked and angry. He really couldn't figure out how the opponent could hit his weak point in one hit. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.